I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think they're on. Speak into the mics, please.
Okay, Mrs. Munson.
Actually, Jesse's going to.
Yes, I'm going to be your fill-in.
Okay, Mrs. Hall.
Andrew Benson. Here. Katrina Binkowitz. Here. Doug Date.
Here.
Joseph Wetmore.
Here.
Edward Levine.
Here. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? We have new microphones. Hopefully, it'll be money well spent, at least it was so far with the planning board. Thank you, Patrick, for being the lead on that. So, the first item of business is privilege of the floor. And this is limited to 20 minutes with a maximum of 3 minutes per speaker. There is a handout in the back, isn't there?
There is.
Relating to privilege of the floor as far as courtesy towards the board members. And we would love to hear your comments. So if anybody has signed up for privilege of the floor, please step forward. Do we have a sheet? Should you go check? Yes,
Here,
here's
I'll
a
be
sheet.
talking.
It's empty.
Okay. No one signed up. Oh, sure.
Okay. Well, does anyone have privilege of the floor? Perhaps they didn't sign up? Okay, we'll move on. Item number 5 in your packet is the Lansing Community Library Report. Andrea, do you want to mention anything about this?
Just that there was a vote on our budget, and it was very, very positive, and I think only 2, maybe 3 negative votes, that's it. So our new budget passed, and 3 new trustees. And after serving 12 years as a trustee, I am now just a town board member, not a trustee. But I am the representative from our board to the library, so I'll probably go to some meetings. I did miss the last meeting, unfortunately, because I was sick, but I think they're doing very well. It's one of the most used little libraries around, even though it's the second newest in the state of New York. There's only one other that's used it ours. And we're 12 years old.
Good. I think it's 1% of our tax liability. I think it's fire protection is 2%, the town's 5%, your school's 2/3, and the county is the rest of it. I will share this with you, and it's not to take any thunder away from you. I did go to that meeting, and I went through the whole budget process, which I thought was impressive. And I'm going to use this as a segue to talk about a program that Linda Pasto and Susan Teresi brought up. And Patrick, I'm going to have you answer them, but did they get back to you today at all? They have not. Okay. So anyways, this program that they're discussing, and hopefully we'll get some information out to the board within the next month, is a program to feed hungry children. And I was listening to their presentation and how they work through the food pantry to help kids in need, especially on the weekends, and kind of put our heads together and brainstormed a little bit, and kind of struck me to use the drop-in center template. That we have a program already through the town, and I reached out to Patrick also and bounced this idea off of him. He says we could easily implement this, and that would be to allocate a certain amount of money for a program in the summer to feed the residents' kids this summer. And I'll leave it up to Patrick and Linda and Sue to come up with the particulars.
These are children who usually are on free lunch.
Correct. Correct. And, you know, this can evolve. The community center does have a kitchen there. If that evolves into something else. I also have people who have a restaurant and want to donate a lot of food to this thing. So it would be very cost effective. Their concern would be a consistent budget because they've had some donations in the past, but that's not consistent. But we've also, as a town, have given money to the library for a scholarship every year. There's no reason why we can't do something like this every year. My hope is to get that information to the town board so that we can hopefully come to a consensus and pass this at our June meeting, because right afterwards, school ends, and then they would be open to that afterwards, and we can slide right in and start that program. So we'll be talking more, I think, with Linda and Sue and Patrick to see how we can implement that moving forward. Okay? All right. So let's go on to the youth service report, unless there's other comments. That's also in our packet, number 6.
Debbie went to the dinner.
Very nice, very nice.
It was probably the most profitable spaghetti dinner they ever had.
Wow.
That's a good sign.
And it really helps those kids to learn how to socialize. Because they had to wait on everybody. The adults made the food. I made all the pizza. But it was a very, very wonderful event.
Okay. Anything else? No? Good. All right, move on to item number 7, which is Mike Silver's not here tonight. Why don't we wait? Because he may have been tied up for a bit. We'll move on, and if at the end of the report he's not here, we'll go ahead and discuss that. Number 8 then is Park and Rec. Pat?
Good evening.
Do you want to move the flowers out of the way? You're welcome to.
Just walk ahead. Who's that guy that did over the fence? You only saw the top of his cool guy? That one or Henry from Laugh-In, right? I'm dating myself. I know, Pat. Laugh-In, what's that? Yeah. Go ahead, Pat.
Obviously, with the weather, we're a little bit behind, unfortunately, but it is what it is. Baseball and softball have started. We've canceled quite a few times already, unfortunately. T-ball has started, but we've canceled that a few times as well. Summer programs are available. Day camps are filling up fast for Myers Park. The park, water's been turned on, so the restrooms are open, camping started, so we're kind of kicking off our whole season here. Any questions?
Busy.
Busy. Very busy.
Can we ask questions about other stuff?
Absolutely.
Yeah, are you doing like Ned? Go ahead.
We get a lot of trees and coming in.
We have a lot of trees coming in with all the grant money we've received, so there'll be lots of plantings in Myers Park, which is it's a big undertaking, but it's a very good undertaking as well. Appreciate the grants from the county.
Just fitting it in the mud is hard.
We'll get it in there. One way or another, we'll get it in.
Is that at 15 make a reference
Perhaps.
to?
I don't know who I did 15, so.
Good. Anything else?
That's it for me.
Things are good. Things are.
Things are good. Things are rolling. New employees are doing very well. Very happy. Technology in line in our office. We're working on the website with Dan right now. It's going to be a work in progress for a while, so we'll get there.
Well, like with most of our employees, you wear multiple hats.
Yeah.
That's appreciated. We get great value out of it.
We even started training Jen today on lawnmower, so we're all wearing very many hats.
Really?
Yes.
Is she going to get her Class B license?
We could probably work that out.
Just for the record, you know, CJ has her Class A.
I know.
I don't think she'll be doing any hauling tractor trailers, but you never know.
But you never know.
That's
We could use your whole equipment.
Yeah, move equipment, right?
That's right.
Okay, next person. Good, okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Number 9 on the agenda is Cricket, Highway Superintendent Report.
Oh, hey, good evening, everyone. Wanted to take a minute just to, we took a little reprieve. Dave, Eric, and I had a working meeting for a couple days. We discussed some good things. Did some good things there. Anyways, moving forward on that, obviously the rain has been very difficult to really get proceeding on a lot of things, but we've worked between the drops and get some water repairs squared away for Golden Point stuff there. Obviously, the pavilion itself is complete. We still got some grade work and some concrete work and stuff, and some grading stuff to finish up there, so hopefully tomorrow we'll put another good dent in that. Generator is installed. We're waiting for propane company to come to a site visit to get a tank set, and then we'll do, hopefully next week at some point, we'll be able to do the initial fire on that, so that'll all be in good shape here up, to take care of that. Working with Soil and Water, they've got a little bit of money and doing some design work north of Lockerbie Hill on a bad section of Salmon Creek there to kind of shore up, get that kind of shifted back in the right direction there. So hopefully that'll be coming to fruition here in the next couple months. That would be an open permit, somewhere between June and September on that to get that squared away. Wanted to ask the board as far as, I've got some quotes and stuff. I'm in the process of putting together a new secured pipe yard. Our old one kind of outgrew its use and it was in bad shape. And with the future dedication of the road coming into play there for the extra property up above for those people, kind of need to be moved. I got some quotes on that. I'm looking for up to $15,000 to secure that. Obviously, it's something I can make work. I'm not opposed if you wanted to throw me a couple bucks for it. But surprise! I kind of like to get that motion, got the pad and everything established for it. It's just a matter of making contact and setting up to have work done on that. I guess I wanted to address the board. I know it's been kind of a contentious situation on Salmon Creek Road. I have some work that has been scheduled to be done last year, and I kind of held off just to make sure everybody didn't perceive it the wrong way. But as you know, the county redid Red Bridge there and stuff. There's still some asphalt from the old drive around and stuff. Part of that plan was to remove that, do a little restoration work there, build in. I had talked to the gun club a couple of years ago when they started this process as far as working in. I have a truck, when I plow, it dumps off there at Red Bridge. The only option they have now is to kind of back up to the driveway they use currently there for their shooting range. It's not really safe, so to speak, for the traveling public. So part and parcel was they had talked about maybe wanting to move their driveway closer to the north side of that bridge in conjunction if I was going to build a turnaround there. So I guess I just want everybody to be aware that there's work going to be done there that has been in the plans and is for the public safety. I just didn't want the perception to be like the town is doing something for the gun club. As part and parcel of that plan, if most people, like you're aware of, kind of the blind knob that hangs out there just back around the curve. That was also part and parcel of, we were going to remove 4 to 6 foot of that bank to gain a little better sight distance because it's always been kind of a dangerous curve there. Now, obviously, with the speed limit signs being installed, hopefully that certainly will help, curtail people's speeds a little bit through there. But if we can increase the sight distance there, as well as, for winter operation and stuff, to be able to turn the truck around a little bit farther away from that curve, it's going to be a safer situation for all of us. So as we start into that work, which someday here when the rain squares away, just so you're all aware of what's kind of going on there, so if you question like, hey, what's, just to make you all aware of that. Outside of that, I guess we're trying to plug forward here, and we've got a pretty full schedule of stuff to get done, and just wait for the weather to cooperate a little better, and move forward from there.
Okay, any questions for Cricket?
I just want to say I appreciate how quickly those speed limit signs went up. You guys must have come up to date. You got your order from the state?
Yep. So we did our best there. I mean, obviously it's a matter of putting the ticket in for underground utilities, which we're confident there's none there, but it's still the same thing. Along with that, we obviously, not sure if anybody saw The lower part of Buck Road, we did get back from that, so they reduced that to 45. It's better than nothing, so the tickets are all in for that. Those signs probably the beginning of next week will be up for that, along with the asking to be striped. I mean, obviously we striped that lower part there last fall for them. That was something that obviously we could arrange to do immediately. So other than that, we're plugging away, and things seem to be kind of working in the right direction anyways. So,
Anyone else have any questions? So, to back up a minute, the pipe fence, as some of you recall, they used to have a recycling collection area there. And that fence was used for some of that security. Now it's been antiquated, whatever, it's time to move on. And also with the movement of your pipe, you want to make that secure now so it doesn't, as we say, the road length and walk away.
correct.
Say that's the reason we want this, and I really think this was probably sooner than later, personal opinion. The second one was a red bridge turnaround. Why didn't make that bridge wider? That's not for me to answer, but the big trucks have to stop and turn around, they can't go over. That concerns me, so what they have to do is they have to turn around someplace. And we don't know how dangerous those curves are, so hopefully that's something that, as you had said, is not doing anything for the Rod and Gun Club, it's simply doing something for the protection of our citizens. So let's put that rumor to bed before it even starts, okay? So that's the second one. Number third one is, and I'm going to go around with you when we go riding again, and look at the roads that have been kind of like worn out this year because of we had so much salt and rain this year that some of these have been accelerated. And we'll get a list together like we used to do in the old days, and drive around and see which ones you want to box out, which ones you want to pave, and which ones you want to go off next year. Okay?
Yep.
Good enough, my friend. I think we're all good unless somebody else has their comment.
Did you say that they're moving their driveway to the other side of the bridge?
No, it'll be on the same side, the north side of the bridge, but perhaps in part and parcel where I build a turnaround, they may decide to move their driveway entrance down a little bit closer to that north side of the bridge, just to get it away from that curve also.
So the turnaround will be on the Leadville side?
No, the North Lansing side.
Okay, so I just got confused again. North of Red Ridge is the turnaround that you're going.
Yes, but they currently have a driveway just north of where I'm gonna build the turnaround that goes into the shooting range that they have there now.
Oh, I see, it's not their main driveway. Well,
I guess not. I
well,
don't know.
the one with the sign that says that it's the right.
Correct.
Is south of that bridge.
Yes.
Okay. So this is a different thing they made.
This is for the new area where they're talking about moving the, right?
So,
I see.
well, like I said, I just thought it was important that all you folks know, so if people drive through and kind of wonder, like, just to know what it's all about, so if you're questioning or whatever, just a heads up on that, so.
Do they have to get a new permit for a new curb cut for that?
Well, no, not if I'm utilizing this turnaround. I mean, if they want to run a driveway off the end of the turnaround, I mean, it's just, I guess at the end of the day, when that's all kind of settled and done or whatever, if that's what their plans are, and just to move things away from that curve, just to create a better sight distance, it's going to be better for everybody, so.
Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks, folks.
Okay. We have number 10, C.J. Randall, Director of Planning Reporting.
Hello, good evening.
And this is this maroon or is this red? This is an interesting color you have.
Oh,
She doesn't know anything about it.
Oh, okay.
That's my color.
Is that your color?
My color for her.
oh, yeah, thank you so much.
Wow, you've been busy.
Yeah, there's a couple of things going on. So thanks everyone for your patience that I haven't been able to get back to you very quickly on a number of things. This is my first week full time, so thanks. Super appreciate all the patience. So just to kind of give you some highlights from this, and maybe Doug would like to chime in about planning board, but nevertheless on Monday, the Ostamicha project received site plan approval. There's just a project on North Trip Hammer between Franklin and Pruville Drive, or Pruville Road, excuse me, a 12,000 square foot, single-story mixed occupancy commercial building that's currently undergoing site plan review. And then the Lake Forest Circle subdivision is back, as they say. The planning board is reviewing, will be reviewing their final plat, hopefully once they submit all of that. Zoning board.
Can I ask a
Yes,
question about
absolutely.
Trip Hammer commercial
Interrupt me.
one? Is that, it says single-story mixed occupancy? So
Yes.
apartments that are just single-story?
I think the better term for that would be mixed use. So there could do a variety of uses, mercantile, business, medical. I think they're anticipated.
Oh, mixed use.
Yeah,
That is a
essentially.
better. Thank you.
Yeah, guess we can, yeah. So, I mean, it's more or less just commercial building, but it could be, I think that in the developer's intent is to do some kind of medical offices there to kind of keep services local to the town center, essentially. That's the idea anyway.
And it's the area that would be south of the Thomas County Trust.
That's correct, yep. Yep, they used to be two parcels, they're consolidated, yep. And feel free to get in touch, we can send you the materials. We're also, by the way, kind of a side issue that we didn't report about here, is that Sue Munson has been working with the clerks to get everything onto Laserfiche. So it should be a lot easier to find current meeting materials. So if you go on to current planning board documents now, you click that link, it takes you right to Laserfiche, and then you can see each project in its respective folder. So hopefully that way, without all the individual PDFs being loaded to the website, you'll be able to see everything in one place. And the great thing is that it doubles as storage as well. So that's pretty nice. Guy came on April 16th and gave a zoning board training, which was fantastic as always. And that was full attendance. The highlights, I think, at least from the last time we spoke, is that he wanted to see the solar law moving in a forward direction. And on Monday evening, we met prior to the planning board meeting to discuss those revisions. We did a significant edits to that, and they sent me back with a wish list of edits that I'm making, and we'll get out to you very shortly in terms of the schedule of adoption. You'll have that very soon. I think Joe has a copy already. They'll kind of tweak that a little bit. We added micro hydro back in, which I had removed, but the planning board let me know that that was a priority. And based on the Tompkins County Energy Roadmap, solar, wind, and micro hydro are kind of the big three. So we're going to go ahead and stick with those. We did also ask about grants for possible accessibility upgrades to Town Hall. So I reached out to Judge Howell to see if he'd be amenable to meeting with me about the JCAP grants. They're a series, it's a grants offered by the state that only court officials can apply for. So I thought, oh, this could be a good opportunity maybe to make upgrades to Town Hall that could benefit both the court and the town, town generally. So I'll let you know where that goes. The signs issue, I had some conversation with Guy about the implementation of the ball field signs. So the best bet and the quickest and easiest route is to have general municipal law amended so that we can actually collect revenue that way from the sign program. So we'd have to get in touch with Senator Helming's office, but we need to get in touch with her anyway because we have an outstanding grant from the SAM program. And speaking of grants, Mike Long, planning consultant Mike Long, has been working on, we've been kind of strategizing for the consolidated funding application, which, as you know, is kind of the Hunger Games of New York State, where we all kind of claw our way to various pots of money. And we talked about the stream bank stabilization project at Myers Park being funded by a different source of money than the local waterfront revitalization program. That's kind of it's a more Byzantine process, and we think going through the water quality improvement program through DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation, might be the better way to go. So I reached out to the town engineers, see if they can come up with a little bit more fleshed out scope of work and feasibility for that, which we possibly might be able to get paid for by a county has a stream corridor revitalization pot of money also. So it's possible we could even get the feasibility study paid for by the county and then parlay that into the larger grant, which would be obviously a great way to save some money. So those, I think, were the highlights from the last time that we spoke and the priorities that you had. So I did just want to update you on that. And then there's a whole list of various meetings and county groups and webinars and things like that that I've attended. So if you have specific questions on that, I'm glad to report. Thanks.
Any questions from the board? Just stay for a moment,
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Well, let me just quickly say that I'm happy to see you on full-time finally. It's been a long process, and I know you have a lot of work to catch up to get to this point, and I'm really happy to see you here full-time now.
Yeah, great. Thanks for your patience. I know it's been a little slow to get back to people, so yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? So Mike Long also has a planning consultant report here. And first of all, I want to thank Patrick for connecting everybody together, because now we'll be doing our weekly meetings. Michael will be in Auburn as we go through all the things on the computers. Today's meeting, he was on a train headed towards New York City to watch Hamilton. And one thing I like about our employees in general is that their willingness to participate as much as possible, whenever possible, wherever possible. So it's all good. And as we are starting to get more clarity on our roles here, I find out that we're getting excellent value. So thank you, Patrick, and thank you, CJ and Michael, for doing that. It's all good, so thank you. On to the next item. This would be Dave Herrick on the engineers report.
Would you like me to wait for the item on the agenda to speak to relative to the...
Do you have any other compelling news to share?
No compelling news, no.
Then I'll exhale and we'll
Okay.
wait then. Okay. Next one is the Ag Committee report from Connie. I think we pretty well have gone for a cycle this year. We're out and about trying to at least, I think, either get the water off the land or something along those lines.
I think everybody's praying.
Amen to that. So we're going to circle back to Mike Sigler since he can't make it tonight and look at his review. As with most of these reports, it's pretty well straightforward, but I want to use this opportunity, and you can pass these out to the fellow board members. And these are for the general public also. This is something to do with a project with the power company. And there are any back there if you're looking for some. I'll leave some later. We all have some? Okay. So this basically is working with Jerry Goodnow and the power company. They want to do a data center up there. They want to get out of the power generating business. And that means for people who are concerned about natural gas, they don't want to do anything with natural gas. They don't want to generate power through the way it is now. They don't want to. Coal is dead pretty well at the end of 2020, and they have no intent, and they're willing to sign a paper stating so that they have no desire to refire the plant with natural gas, whether through a pipe, or through trucks, or anything else. What they're trying to do, and this is one thing we're trying to lead up with the members here who are concerned about the solar up there, is that they need power. That was one thing 2 years ago when we met and tried to get them with their solar array on board, is that they need customers. So what they've done is they basically said, we'll be our own customer. So this will be in-house. And what the plan is that sometime in June, hopefully either the second Wednesday or the fourth Wednesday, in June to have a presentation, a question and answer period with the power company representatives and to show them what this outlay is about. And basically what they tried to do before was an 18 megawatt, which would roughly be about 3,600 households. This one will be 15 megawatts. This data center will be, just imagine a warehouse from the outside, and on the inside you just have one rack after another of computers. It's not Bitcoin, these are all talking points too, you can do it later, but it is something that they want to go forward with. They think they can generate between 30 and 40 jobs with this. They also think that these jobs will be between $40,000 and $60,000 each. All this information is here. We'll leave it out to the public. I've sent it to Dan, he can publish it. I'll send it to Matt Montag, so he can do the Tompkins Weekly. It's all information straight right there. The websites, here's the information for everybody to see. And at the end of the day, what we need from Lansing and the surrounding areas is a unified voice saying we need to have this done. That we are in favor of this, and that it seems to fit the criteria of the carbon footprint, seems to fit the criteria of transitioning to I guess you call it the be more green. All these things come together, and wouldn't it be nice if that end of Lansing was the next industrial park? Because you have power, you have electricity there, and what they're trying to do with the New York State Power Authority, which is NYPA, not NEPA, I get all these acronyms, I mean, you know, so NYPA, New York State Power Authority, they want to get their power through hydro. They also want to do it through solar, and they also want to have batteries there to store it. So just imagine a high peak time when everybody's sucking all the juice out trying to get their air conditioners to work. They're off the grid because they're running on batteries. It also is a win-win for the grid. And when you look at these batteries, they're not cheap. $2 million per megawatt. So 50 megawatts will cost you $100 million for these batteries, and they last 4 to 5 years. So, okay, and then what do you do afterwards? But this is how you implement, this is how you learn, this is how you get better at it. So this is something that we as a board, I hope that the board will come to a consensus to support, a letter of support. I hope that the board will reach out to Barbara Lipton, Michael, come right up here and sit down, my friend. We're talking about the power plant right now. Okay. And you can chime in anytime you want. But we're trying to get on board with this power plant to do this. Like I said, that energy produced will only go towards their project. It's not going to be sent out to the grid. It's not going to do anything else. These are the talking points you saw also from Jared Goodnow. So that's where I am from here. I've given them background on this. If you want to see it from a county perspective, you want to chime in now. We've already gone through the report of what you have submitted, so now we're talking about the power company.
All right. Well, I'm sorry if I'm being redundant. Track me.
No, go ahead.
But you know, I'm going to get the county business in just a minute. But I did want to talk about this. You know, last week some new rules are coming out onto the books from the New York State's environmental regulator. They are going to have a big impact, obviously, on the Cayuga power plant because it's one of only 2 coal-fired power plants left in the state. The rules that are being put in place, basically knocks them out of the box. They're not going to be able to burn coal and meet the regulations, so obviously they're going to have to close down. The only other option was to repower. Still on the table. I mean, they could truck in natural gas, I suppose, or if somebody ever wants to run a pipeline to them, they could. But they've really they've foreseen this coming, and the power plant has decided to kind of go in another direction if they can. They want to make this into a data center, so clearly the talking points you probably were just talking about. Pretty exciting. It could be 30 to 40 new jobs. These are going to be higher tech jobs than what we had in place before. The company seems like they want to take care of their people as well. And so a data center, what's it going to be? Basically cloud storage. It doesn't actually go to a cloud. It goes to someplace here on land. This will be one of those big data banks that we can store. It's remarkable. I was at another meeting a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about LiDAR, and they were shooting LiDAR down into a jungle so that they could map Mayan relics, right? The amazing part was they had to do, each little point was a data point. And there was just so much data in here. Just where do you put it all? That's where you put it all. You put it into a data center. It's going to take a lot of power to run that, so that's why they need an interconnect agreement so that they can draw from the grid that kind of power. They've already done this. I asked Blackstone Group, what experience do you have in this? You're a power producer, you're not a storage facility. They've actually already done this to a plant out in Montana. They had a lot of support from the state of Montana to do this. The governor really got on board and got behind it. So what happened there was they were able to create this. They need the same kind of support from our state that they had kind of out in Montana. What is that support? What does that look like? Well, they need some power from the New York Power Authority. They need an allocation from there. That will help with the transition to this new data center. This totally fits with the governor's plans to move away from fossil fuels. It also has the added benefit of not stranding these assets up there. That would be sad to just have this power plant there and sit and rot, and that would be all that would happen. I mean, I've seen this happen to power plants down in Hugo, Chemung County. Hickman power plant just kind of sits there on the river and it just rots away. It doesn't do anything. This would be something that would be bringing back on tax rolls, right? Right now, we keep losing value. Well, this is going to be a brand new valuable asset. It's $100 million new investment into the town. So just something that we can go forward with. This allocation that we were talking about, though, is essential. It would be an allocation basically of power from Niagara Falls. They need it at that cheaper rate to make this happen. The also nice thing about the allocation is obviously green power. Niagara Falls is the largest renewable energy resource that we have in New York State, so we would have that added benefit too. So that's something that really the governor, I'm hoping, will get on board with. They're talking about things like artificial intelligence. Martha Pollack up at Cornell University, she is an expert at that. That is her field of study, is AI and mechanical learning and things like that, machine learning. And Cornell, obviously, global, we're going to get to this in a second, global university. This, again, fits into that. What is the next step? And Lansing will then lead the path on what that next step is going to look like. So just exciting news. You already have talking points. I lay out everything pretty much in my report here about what's going to happen with that. And that's where the power plant wants to go. That is the transition they want to make right now. So hopefully you all can get behind that. I don't see why you wouldn't, but who knows? But something that just really could be so impactful for the town and for the county actually as something new, and it really is new to New York State. I don't think there is one actually in New York State. If there is, it's a much smaller one than what they have planned here.
No, they're actually trying to do this also at Somerset, so they have a twofold on both of theirs. And as you transition from one to the other, you really try to address some of the concerns, which are how do you implement this? But these are all noble ideas, and I always use the example of the calculator that runs on this type of light. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to generate that much power out of your house with this type of light? I mean, it would alleviate a lot of things, but we're not there yet. So having said that, these are some of the things I think that for as diverse as we are in this county, I think a lot of the circles cross on this issue.
Well, and again, with power, I put this in the report too. Power production in this state, they don't really see much of a future for it, even with natural gas. I mean, the prices for electricity have really gone through the floor in this state. To make that kind of investment into that, they're seeing this as maybe a better model, and they're saying this is we can make a much better business case for this, but they do need that power allocation. So that's something that, and we have a lot of partners already. They don't know how to build a data center, but all of their partners do. They've already made those connections, and they know how to do it, because they did it out in Montana. So the same partnerships are going to come together to do this. And even at the county.
Can I present a few questions here?
Yeah, please.
So are they going to do this in the power plant building? Are they going to retrofit the building? Are they going to build a separate building?
It's my understanding they're going to retrofit the building, but they are going to build the solar panel array outside, so that'll be 17 megawatts, 18 megawatts. So.
It would be on 75 acres like the other one was.
But it's basically the same footprint of the building or similar footprint.
Well, I'm not going to speak for them on that. What I do know from what I read here is that rather than 18 megawatts on 75 acres, it would be 15 megawatts on 75 acres. And
no, I'm not talking about the data center.
I'm not dodging this question.
Okay.
I'm simply saying that we should write down these questions, and at the presentation, whether in the second Wednesday, hopefully or the fourth Wednesday, we can have a Q&A session here. And if you have questions that you want to email me CJ ahead of time. That way we can send them out to people so we have accurate information. And one of the things I asked Jerry specifically is that will you sign an agreement that you will not refire the plant with natural gas? He said yes. You take the natural gas right off the table. Right off the table, because I asked him that specifically. So that is no longer an issue for the trucks, the trucking, the pipes. Goodbye, okay? Where it's a new chapter, new book, new story, new success. This is entirely different now. They're going to reinvent themselves and stuff like this. So and I asked them that specifically because that will take a lot of the angst out of the room.
Right.
And then you become a symbiotic relationship as opposed to something that's contentious. And I will hold his feet to the fire on this also, because if you want us to move forward, you have to sign that paper saying, look, you're not going to do this. And that's what he said. And so
I think that'll help a lot.
That'll be huge, my friend, because...
So another question, on the railroad tracks, if they're not running coal up there, can those get repurposed? Because that's beautiful lakefront property that we could use for recreational uses much better than just abandoned tracks, and I'm wondering if that's a possibility on the table.
I think it's going to be Watco.
That...
The train company, I think.
Separate company.
Yeah, my understanding is that I'm not going to speak for them, but Watco leases it from the Northwest Southern. So they lease it from us, so Northwest Southern still owns it. My understanding is that, you might have more information on that, Dave, but that my information is that the railroad does not give up their tracks.
The other great thing, the reason I want to put this here too is because they already have a water intake agreement. And obviously, they need a lot of water to cool a certain farm like this. So.
And I guess the next question is, the folks that are working there now, are they going to be able to keep some of those and transition them into this new position?
Well, let me answer that question, because I asked them that also. Basically, there'll be 2 to 4 year degree positions. Can some of these people be transitioned over? We hope so. The way that I phrase it is that they got a better chance of staying employed going in this direction than not doing anything, because they won't be employed at all. So maybe some of them can transition over, maybe some of them can retire early. I don't know how many are there anymore. My hope was that they would stay at least busy enough to have most of them exit on their time schedule, not all of a sudden say, here, you're 58 years old, good luck with that, you're on your own now. Haven't been through that, it's not fun. But having said that, that question did come up. And I'm not going to speak for them either, but it's a different business model than what they're doing now. So does that mean that they're not going to have jobs? I'm not going to say yes, I'm not going to say no. I'm going to try to help this business survive and get it as much assessed value for the town and employ as many people as possible. Whatever happens after that, that's up to the business. That's the best we can do. But that is a concern of mine, and I have voiced that to Jerry Goodenow also.
May I ask a question?
Please do.
It was my understanding that the governor put aside some money for communities that had power plants that were closing, but that we didn't qualify because our power plant didn't close.
Right.
So would we now qualify for that?
That is presumably yes. So that's something we'll have to take back up with Barbara. She was the one who kept pushing that. And yeah, definitely something we're going to apply for. If power plant closes, power plant closes. It's really to benefit us, to benefit you as a tax entity, and this is going to take a while to bring online, so there should be money for that.
I don't know. I mean, it's a new day. It's a new business model. I mean, obviously, we accepted any help that the governor can give us. 2 years ago, we thoroughly, it was more than 2 years ago, because Senator Zolia wrote the letter, I believe, right? So it was more than 2 years ago, we actually, it must have been my first year in office, where we tried to see, can we get money from this? And we had Barbara Lifter write the letters. We had full support from everybody. I mean, when you have full support from everybody, you really cherish those. You don't forget those moments, because it doesn't happen very often. So, having said that, we tried everything. And the problem is that it's like trying to inherit your parents' estate when they're still alive and they're on life support. And that's basically what it was. They're down to 20 million, but they're not done, because they could still limp along. And so that was the situation. It was kind of like the worst case scenario. If you're not going up, you're not going down, you just sit there. Meanwhile, as we talked about earlier, 11 years ago, it was valued at $160 million. And if you cumulatively go down 160 million down to where it is now, it's, it adds up to almost $1 billion. And you multiply that by $30 a thousand, that's a lot of tax revenue that Lansing's out of. So, having said all that, I try to focus on positives. This is an opportunity. The past is past. I'm focusing on how we can help Lansing now. And if we have to help them reinvent themselves, I'm all in. And if Albany can give us some money to help that transition, wonderful. I mean, only helps the governor's goal of switching over. I mean, here it is, a power plant that's no longer coal. What do you want to do with it? I mean, my whole thing is that you want this, show us how much you want it. Help us.
Do we have an approximate timeline that they're looking at?
Once again, this is the June 2nd. I mean, these are all questions that, like I said, please, just keep sending us these questions because I don't want to speak for anybody else, for any business. This is their plan. I mean, what the good news was that we developed that relationship. I mean, Michael and I developed that relationship with them. I still have the picture there 3 years ago when we did this thing with the solar, and most of you haven't changed. The guy next to you looks a little older, but we all have. All the players are still there basically, and hopefully this one's going to have much more positive results. Anything else, Michael?
That's it on the power plant. I think I covered everything I was going to say. All right, so in other county news, we approved our 2020 tax levy, and that's our levy goal and our spending targets for 2020. The tax levy resolution directs County Administrator Jason Molino to prepare a recommended operating and capital budget that can be supported with a tax levy increase of 2.76%. That increase is beneath the county's tax cap, which is currently estimated at 3.51%. So he expects that 2.76 increase in the levy. He thinks that's going to actually lead to a lower tax rate yet again, so that's nice. It does, of course, be boosted assessments across the board pretty much because housing prices are still rising in this county. So it looks like somebody who's median value home, the median value of home has gone up in price. So that's up to $190,000 now, so it looks like they'll pay an extra $10 in county tax. But again, the rate should come down, so if your assessment hasn't moved, your taxes should go down. We also approved 2 agreements with CNS companies of Syracuse. This relates to the airport expansion and the New York State DOT Upstate Airport Initiative Grant. Those agreements total $2.28 million. That's the design and the bidding services and construction phases of Phase 2 of the airport, and $200,000 for the design and bidding services for the general aviation customs facility that is part of the airport project. Good news from the airport project. We were sweating it out with the feds, but the feds did come through, and that was a group effort. So you had Schumer, you had Reed really putting their resources together, and the feds came through with not quite $10 million, but I might kick in the extra $10 and make it $10 million, but it was close.
That was the deal breaker right there.
That's it. Sorry, we're not taking this for that. But definitely a relief. I mean, we've got now $24 million total from both the state and the feds. And the fees are going to pay, they're going to make up the difference. So it's none of your property tax money is going to the airport, which is, we've never actually done that. We've loaned kind of that money before, we gave it to the bridge loan. We've never actually done county money. So the fees and things like that are going to pay for that extra money that needs to get redone. And you're going to have basically what amounts to a brand new airport, customs facility. You'll be able to fly to, say, Toronto and fly back right into Ithaca. It really opens up a whole nother hub for us if we wanted to fly other places. You could actually use Toronto then as a hub, which is different for us. So it just gives us another option. Also, 2 new special committees come out of the legislature. One has to do with the census. We're doing the complete count committee for the 2020 census. Mike Lane is going to be heading that up, and Legislator Glenn Moore, he's going to head up the downtown facilities committee. We're doing that because we bought the land down there on Toby Street. We're going to consolidate some departments into one building. We're also going to assess, we have another building, Building C, that we may not need anymore. That's where the Board of Elections assessment is. Maybe we sell that. That's what I would advocate, but that's why we need to have this committee, and we need to take a look at it and see what we're going to do. We also awarded the tourism capital grants for 2019. That totaled $200,000. Again, it does not come out of your property tax. That comes out of the room fees, the room occupancy tax. you know, a lot of things get funded under that. The Ithaca Festival, which is coming up, a lot of fun. Some of the things that we do to here in Lansing. So, and it makes our area a little bit better with all these different tourism grants. Lastly, we scheduled 2 upcoming public hearings. They are both for our next meeting, which is on May 21st. We're going to take up the amendment to the Tompkins County Code. It's going to add, we had admitted 2 subsections. It's kind of boring, I know, stuff, but you know, we have to have a public meeting on this. We also, concerning more Lansing, the old Kingdom Farm here, you know, that's 525 acres. That was, you guys wanted to add that to agricultural district. We actually needed to have a public hearing on that and vote on that, so that's coming up too. But that passed through committee, it didn't look like it was going to be a problem. So that is it.
Any questions?
I know, Jen had.
You can let us know if there's any opposition to the Kingdom Farm thing, and if you have to.
I will. To be honest, I think there would be more opposition to you guys than it is to us. Ours is more of a, I mean, yours is the big change, right? It's the zoning change. Ours is more of how we recognize it, because we don't have land use things. So ours is more of just saying to Lansing, yes, okay, that's what you guys want to do. Great. You kind of sign off on it. So, that was it. That ball was in your court, not ours.
Okay. All right, hey, thank you.
Thanks, Eddie.
Okay, next item, there's been some concerns about the floodplain law. CJ, you want to come on up here? Do you need to be up here also, Dave, or you okay? He's the guy.
Back you up.
You don't like the microphone.
Not
Bring up the rules of law here.
So there's been some concerns through emails, whatever, about amending the floodplain law. And my question is this a general floodplain law, or is this designed for a specific business? And if it's a general floodplain law, this is something that probably should be discussed and gone through the process of the zoning, but I'll let CJ more elaborate on that.
Well, I don't have a scope of work for what this would be, the changes that you want.
Well, and I don't know what the intent is. If the intent is because the Rod and Gun is building and they want to have that stopped, I don't think that's appropriate. But if this is about, in general, what people are concerned about the floodplain law, I'll open it up to the rest of the board members and share their concerns.
Well, the suggestion we got is like a dozen and a half people writing and asking us to amend the floodplain law to not allow toxic substances to be distributed on floodplain land. And I think that's a genuine concern. And I'm sure there's specifics like the gun club that would fall within that. But I think in general, floodplains are places where the water collects off the land and runs into the streams and lakes. And we don't have any protection to stop people from spreading toxic stuff in that area, and I think people want to see it in general, not just on the gun club land.
So if it's in general, then I think, CJ, you should probably be charged with coming up with a scope of work and schedule, and then
Okay.
get back to us and we can start that discussion.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I haven't seen any emails to that particular effect, or I would have been prepared to speak about it.
No, and I apologize if that wasn't the intent to put you on the spot. We're simply saying, I think this is more of a general discussion right now. And the general discussion is that if this is a concern, what is the procedure to go through with a concern? Is that there's a certain process that you go through in general for this type of area.
Yeah, okay, and so I thought originally the concern was about the maps that were used. Was that I know that there was a recent appeal to the Zoning Board of Appeals regarding the area of special flood hazard and how that had been determined. That's the only issue that I'm currently aware of for existing in the floodplain, or in the flood damage prevention law, but there actually is a huge amount of discretion because of those discovery maps being included, the entire FEMA process. But I can say that the county is working on updating their hazard mitigation plan right now through the end of the year. So it's a really good time to look at the scope of any changes you want to see made, especially because the town can upgrade the flood damage prevention law to participate in something called CRS. It's the National Flood Insurance Program. It has a community rating system, and it's a voluntary program for municipalities to enter in. If they're willing to strengthen their floodplain regulations, it can actually provide discounts to policyholders. I don't actually have the data on me right now on how many people actually have flood insurance policies in the town of Lansing, but I can come up with all of this for you. I'm happy to recommend a bunch of changes that you might like to see made. I could do that, and then whatever else you want to add to it.
So I think we're talking about the structural, the maps, that we're just, what you're talking about. How you measure where the floodplain is?
No, I don't think that was at all part of what was being suggested. It was talking about once the floodplains were determined, and the suggestions that we got from the public
Yes.
didn't talk about the map. They just said, once you determine it's a floodplain, these activities should be allowed.
What should you be doing it? Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying in addition to
Yeah.
what she's describing, the letters were encouraging us to review and solidify what we consider to be uses that are inappropriate in a flood and also riparian areas, right?
Yes, I think it's an issue with the maps too that needs to be cleaned up.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I
So
think
this,
that's something that you've been talking about.
well, I think because the NFIP discovery map is specifically referenced in the general provisions, we can actually work off of the data that's available there. There's I think there's one stream segment that has been mapped and modeled by FEMA. It happens to be Salmon Creek because obviously that's the largest. But okay, so what we might actually be talking about is changes to zoning. I think I said heard something about uses, right? So maybe like an overlay or.
I think the request was to look further at what actual zoning we have and the restrictions in our code related to toxics and whether we should firm up the code in specific ways. Not just related to lead, but related to, say if you have a car wash, you don't want it in a certain area where there's a lot of outflow of a certain type. But I think if we're going to look at it, we should look at it on the larger scale for all things that are inappropriate in floodplain areas. Open the discussion up further.
Yeah, there's a lot of great work that's been done on, for instance, Danby, Caroline have both done, I think Caroline has now a groundwater protection law, so it's that's been tied to the aquifer studies that have been done there by USGS, so there's a lot of great data to be able to back that up. I, really just starting to scratch the surface on what data we have, so thanks for being patient there with that as well. So it's possible you could do a flood damage prevention overlay as well that can define the uses that you explicitly do not want to see within that particular area. That's another environmental protection overlay district, such as like steep slopes or some of the others that Joe has been mentioning. So that's kind of next after the solar and micro hydro wind and actually battery energy storage local law. But we can try to move that on a little quicker if you want to see kind of a scope of work for what you want and the timeline. We can certainly come up with that. There's no reason why not.
One of my concerns is since it's on your third full day.
Well, what have you been
How many people can the boy eat, in 1 week? Is that, I think to prioritize, I think that the solar situation needs to be addressed because you're working on it right now.
We want to get
other
that
scope
done.
of work, if you want to come up with a timeline, and if anybody has any comments, we want to send you, if the board members can see the rest of the board, so that we know, and we'll, share these letters with you so you get an idea of what the concerns are. We can move forward, and maybe at our next meeting in June, maybe put together a scope of work so we can move forward, see what the timeline will be on that. Because, you have a lot on your plate with the land use and the solar, and the list keeps going on and on and on.
Well, there's a lot I haven't mentioned also. managed to omit quite a bit, if you can believe it. But, this morning, just another example was talking to our code enforcement officer, Lynn Day, about the annual stormwater report, which you're going to have in front of you tonight. As you may know, we're a community that has a report to the state, that then reports to the EPA. And I have a feeling, because we are one of these designated communities, and Ulysses was audited about 3 years ago by the EPA, and the village was audited, I think, 2 years ago. I think maybe the clock is running short on this, and I'd really like to get a handle on our drainage districts, our overall stormwater operations and maintenance, what town-owned parcels we have versus landowner-owned parcels, how those are being maintained. So this is kind of an offshoot of that, but suffice it to say that this is a priority too. I obviously want to make this happen. I just didn't know the extent that this was important until I just saw it on the agenda. So I'm happy to come up with the scope and schedule for you that could be reasonably addressed. Now, if it's a zoning change, that takes some time. I mean, good zoning work takes a while to set a thing through, and it has to be based on,
We acknowledge that. We want to do good zoning in our next update, so the concept is not to rush anything through and compromise that ultimate goal.
I just want to tell you a story about a floodplain that happened probably 15 years ago. And on our dairy farm, we do not consider manure toxic. I think it's a wonderful thing for the fields. But if it gets into Salmon Creek, it is a big problem. And we do own property to the creek on our farm. Very, very pretty property. And it's very steep. So we keep heifers down there. And of course, they spread their own manure. We do not spread manure down on the creek bed, where the creek is. But a much bigger farm had their manure storage pipe break, and it came flooding down through the other side of Salmon Creek Valley into Salmon Creek, and there was a massive fish kill. Okay. We were, my husband and I were visited, and I can't remember if it was EPA or FEMA, it was probably EPA, with guns. I mean, we were in shock. They came up the driveway and wanted to talk to us about our manure. And I actually let them in the house. Now that I think about it, I should have never let them in the house because they had pistols, and I thought, what? And they just take it extremely seriously. And I agree. Now that's something that shouldn't go on a floodplain into Salmon Creek. And they're very strict about it. And I don't think lead should either. But this happened, it's a true story, and it was not our farm, but it was like shocking.
Well, thank you. Yes.
So there are many things that can pollute the water.
Exactly, and that kind of illustrates another good point, which is I'd like to have the town have more involvement with the Tompkins County Soil and Water Conservation District and the Agriculture Environmental Management, the AEM. It's a voluntary program to create more lake-friendly farms. We're way behind a lot of areas of the state in this particular aspect of getting these credits and assistance, crop cover plantings, all kinds of assistance to the farms, and that's kind of one area where local land use doesn't have as much stretch, of course, with agriculture, but in terms of environmental protection overlays and floodplains, yes, that certainly can be done. Yeah. And we can add them actually to the scope of work for the environmental protection overlay districts that Joe has already discussed. So,
Or we can widen that lens a little bit.
exactly, yep.
Dan?
I have a question that's probably for Guy. I know that with zoning changes, there's grandfather. So the new zoning doesn't really kick in until someone wants to do something new, but the old people can still do what they're doing as long as they keep doing that thing. But is there grandfathering in a floodplain law?
Floodplain laws are designed to operate more like building permits. They have to do with protecting downstream properties and people from being hit by the missiles that might be created if a structure isn't properly anchored or protected against the force of floodwaters. So what I think everyone's talking about is actually a zoning change. But I guess it depends. I've never seen a single one of them, 10 to 12 letters, so I have no idea what we're talking about. But it strikes me as a zoning issue. But in terms of whether there's grandfathering for floodplain laws, yes, they operate like building permits by and large. So if you have an existing structure in a floodplain, you don't have to come up to those new standards until you need a new permit or do new construction. And there's actually rules that identify how much square footage you have to damage and repair, or how much square footage you increase by in order to trigger it.
What about activities versus buildings that exist and aren't being updated yet?
Floodplain laws don't regulate a lot of activities. They can, but they're really oriented towards making sure that when you do construct, I mean, there's a lot of engineering in it too, and I can defer to Dave, there's a lot of planning in it, I can defer to CJ. But they're really geared towards making sure that when you construct or install something in a floodplain, it's built in a way that will withstand flooding, that the lower floors above the floodplain, that your foundations and your electrical equipment aren't going to be inundated by water and become basically, you know, a way for someone to get fried. There's lots of different ways how you can get water through a foundation without wiping the building out. There's, depending on where it is, louvers, pass-throughs, different methods of construction. So the applicant who puts in the application has some choices to make, but they have to somehow meet the requirements of the floodplain law.
But that's what the trigger is, it's a construction project of some kind.
Right, floodplain laws aren't necessarily concerned with whether you're building a chicken coop or a 3-car garage. They're concerned with the structure itself. It's more like a building permit process. So when you want to regulate the uses that are there to prevent certain things from getting into a surface waters, or because surface waters are usually directly connected at some point to aquifers and also getting into your aquifers, then you're really talking about a zoning issue because you're regulating the land use. So both have grandfathering in the sense that I think you're using it, but it's very different. One has to do with repair and replacement of existing structures, and one has to do with constitutionally protected property rights. So they're different things, but they're related.
Thank you.
So, to be continued.
I will get together with CJ. I think it's problematic, and I'm sorry that you didn't get copies of the stuff that people were talking about before you were brought up here. I think it puts you in a hard position.
Saw that on the agenda, it's like,
Yeah.
well, we could leave it off if you want.
In all fairness, for the interest of transparency, I'd like to have, if whatever conversations are done, I'd like to have the rest of the board be involved in this also. So which means if you're having conversations, I don't know why, Joe, you feel you have to do with her alone. I think what we can do is simply CC emails back and forth, that would be fine.
Yeah, I know you'd wanted to wait to share the environmental protection overlay drafts until I had a chance to take a look and guide, just so we didn't have too many iterations, I think maybe.
Yeah, I don't think I'm trying to squeeze the board out of anything. I think I'm trying to move things forward. Sometimes it's easier to do it in person than to do a lot of emailing back and forth. I'm very concerned about getting some environmental protection overlays in place soon. I agree the solar law needs to get in place quickly too. I think we've got a lot of things that we'd like to do quickly, and we'll get to them on a schedule. And I think that's part of what you've been doing, is trying to set up a plan of action of here's what we're going to do and here's the timeline that we're going to do them in. And I think that's really good. And I just want to work on that. And I want to catch up on what people have been saying, and I want to talk about how we can implement this best, and then come up with some ideas that we can share with the board.
I would like to have the whole board involved, because if it involves the Groton gun, you have to recuse yourself, as you said before. If you're talking about something in general, I think that the board should be involved in all those emails back and forth and share with summations. I think that would be very helpful.
So couldn't we have it at a work session?
I think we can have a discussion probably on our next June meeting. We have part of that.
Okay, so we'll have a scope of work and an anticipated or draft schedule of options. You can kind of see how that timeline would play out. Would you like to specifically focus on flood damage or the flood overlay or floodplain overlay. Would you like to consider the other? They were in the work plan. They were part C of the land use work plan on the 2019 department work plan that I sent along. I guess that was a while ago now, a couple months ago. And that could include the steep slopes, and I think there was woodlands.
Stream corridor.
Stream corridor.
Well,
And the scenic byway corridor.
The scenic byway, okay.
I've been working on.
if this is a zoning issue, shouldn't this be on one of your working meetings for the planning board first?
That will be in the schedule of adoption, that will, how much time that will take for the planning board to review, and you'll see.
But I really think
It takes a little
if
bit.
you're going to have an open discussion about this, I think the best place to have it is probably at the your first hour that you sometimes use from 5:30 to 6:30 for the planning board. That way you'd have 2 sessions a month. And you can probably get some of this out, and have an open discussion about it. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, I think it might be in the land use ordinance that the planning board has to refer zoning to the town board. So, yeah, so they'll take a look at it. We'll come up with that, just kind of like I did on Monday night with them with the solar, micro hydro, and wind. So we talked through it, we looked at the schedule of adoption, they said, okay, this is great, we're gonna look at the draft and go ahead and keep the ball rolling. So we'll just do the same thing for this.
Outstanding, thank you.
Okay.
Next item, Bouchard's been very gracious to be in the back. If I woke you up, sorry. And Dave Herrick. They are unfortunately at the bottom of the list here. One is the formation of the Warren Road Sewer District. I think that's the first thing, right? And you also have, David, what else do you have on your docket here?
I don't think that, I think that's it.
Okay, so can we move, like I said, they had long meetings also. Can we move up to number, I'd like to move up to number 28 and get that out. Not that I want to see you all night, but, or you also, Brian, but you have a long drive home, so if you want to move to number 8, which is resolution and order calling public hearing on proposed formation. Town of Lansing Warren Road Sewer District Extension, number 1. We'll get some background on this?
Yes, that's why I'm here for background purposes.
No, I want some background first, and then we'll set, I think then we have to set the public hearing.
So you have before you a map plan and report, which was finalized in recent weeks and has been presented to the Water and Sewer Advisory Board for comment and adoption and recommendation to move forward to the town board. And the district itself is not very complicated. As you all know, the New York State DOT is looking at the new facility, sub-residency facility on Warren Road, and certainly a connection to the town's sewer system on Warren Road is an appropriate way to manage and handle and dispose of the sewage that's generated by that new facility. And in the course of understanding what benefited properties would want to be included in this extension, some additional private landowners had expressed an interest to the town in different ways and at different times. But collectively, there's 4 properties, one which will be the DOT facility, 2 others which are private landowners, and one little remnant triangle that is actually owned by Cornell University that was orphaned off of this larger parent parcel when Warren Road was reconstructed and realigned in the 70s and 80s. The Cornell parcel, I'll speak to that. Again, the parent parcel is already in the Warren Road Sewer District. And if we did not encumber this little orphan triangle within this new extension, we'd end up with a donut hole. So it just makes sense to wrap that little triangle back into this extension. The parent parcel is already contributing through its EDU allocation to the original Warren Road Sewer District, so this little piece is a leftover that now can be dealt with and can be wrapped in and cleaned up. So the other 2 private parcels, one being the storage facility, the other one being the Kennedy Smith parcel, which is at the intersection of Warren Road and Hillcrest. It too has been severed, if you will, by Hillcrest Road, but it is one tax map parcel and it's linked, and so they have tangible frontage on Warren Road and an ability to connect into the sewer system. So for all those reasons, we ended up with 4 parcels being proposed for the extension. There will be no cost to the town or the district. With the construction of improvements within these 4 parcels, DOT will be putting in their own pump system. They'll have a collection in a pump system which will discharge up to a gravity pipe on the west side of Warren. We're going to drill underneath Warren Road to make that gravity pipe connect into the town's main on the east side. Same thing would happen for the other 2 private parcels if and when they had an interest in connecting to the sewer system. No one's obligated to connect to the system. If you're in the district and your existing septic system were to fail, then in all likelihood, the county health department, in lieu of allowing you to put in a new replacement subsurface system, would want you to connect to the sewer main. So people can continue using what they have until they want to change it or it fails. So the costs for a property being in the district are spelled out in here. They will be the same rate, the same charges, annual charges that are currently being assessed to the benefited properties in the Warren Road Sewer District. So there's continuity and assignment of EDUs, calculation of rates, all be consistent for town bookkeeping purposes.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for our town engineer?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember exact numbers, but as I remembered, the different properties, the EDUs added up differently. It was, yeah, 40 of them didn't equal 40 of them in another one, and I wasn't
Page
sure.
4.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure why that was.
Are you looking at, is there a specific item in the
I was looking
report, Joe, that you were looking
at,
at?
I don't remember exactly where
Not
it
to speak
was.
for, I think it's on page 4, why, for instance, Tompkins County has 6 EDUs and Hillcrest has 1.25.
Oh, okay.
No, that wasn't what I was looking at. What I was looking at was when you looked at 40 of one group and you added somebody else up, the numbers didn't add up. I can't remember exactly where that was, but it was the number of employees. Where you said it was, when you figured the employees for the Cornell land and you figured the employees for the airport land, they weren't figured at the same rates, and I was wondering why they were.
Oh, okay, all right. Well,
You understand what I'm talking about?
Generally, a household, for design purposes, you look at the number of bedrooms, and typically the design value is 110 gallons per day per bedroom.
Mhm.
In the case of an employee in a commercial setting, you don't have all of the similar household-related functions. Laundry, you're not there all the time, shorter duration. So, yeah, the rule of thumb is that for estimating flows for commercial, you can use an employee basis, which is roughly 25 gallons per day. So I just made a very general assumption that if there were commercial uses at some point in the future on any of those lands, it could generate a value for design flow purposes. And we're really talking very small loadings here. The DOT facility is obviously going to be the more significant of the sewage generators. The other properties are pretty minimal.
So you're estimating for these properties that are basically vacant at the moment?
That's correct.
The part of Kennedy Smith that's actually adjacent to the road, that property is being estimated. The Cornell chunk's being estimated. What if they decide to develop significantly different than the estimation? Let's say the Kennedy Smith, instead of that being a commercial thing, put in a series of houses that would generate more flow. How would that affect all of this?
What it would affect is how the town issues permits and how the village of Cayuga Heights monitors the issuance of those permits. So if you ended up with a 100-unit apartment building, it would have a reduction on the available capacity left for the balance of the benefited properties within the Warren Road Sewer District. So that's something that you would have to actually look at, discuss, and determine if it's an impact to the benefit district at the time that something's considered for site plan review, as an example. So it could be part and parcel of an environmental review for a project like that, that you're taking away from the Warren Road Sewer District 100 units worth of flow that the town hadn't anticipated. So,
And you may not have that. That's item number, I believe it's item number 24, which you might want to hang around for.
Well, let's say that they were planning to build a 100-unit apartment complex, and you went through and did all this, and you said, there's not enough flow for that, the DOT facility, and the other units there. Would that change this report and say we would want to do something different? Let's say they were talking about, everybody knew they wanted to do this. We didn't know if they get it approved or not, but we know they want to do it. Would that change this report?
well, what it would do is just indicate that the likelihood of the town reaching its agreement capacity would happen sooner.
Okay.
So then the town board, on behalf of the districts, would have to figure out how do we recapture allocation for the rest of the uses in the Warren Road districts that thought they were going to have sewer and expected to have sewer. So, yeah.
So it's entirely possible that everybody who's in the district can't actually hook up because there may not be enough capacity if people ahead of them do the hookup and use up all the capacity that's left.
It would take a pretty sizable project to make that happen. The town has a very generous allocation of capacity at this point. I guess that must be your number 24.
We hope to have some.
Yeah, I imagine. Okay.
After about another half hour, we hope to have some.
Yeah, sure. So, but it's certainly something you have to deal with this. It's not just sewer, it's same thing for water. I mean, all of our systems have inherent capacity limitations, and you have to see them coming. And if the planning process is going to call for a cheese production facility, well, we're going to have water and sewer issues that we have to worry about, and you got to put that into the mix of the review.
Okay, I'm just seeing how those assumptions play out if they were assumed differently.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions for? If not, I guess what, this time we set the public hearing?
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a resolution to set the public hearing. Information of town of Lansing, Warren Road, Sewer District, Extension Road.
I'll second it.
So it's at, what, 6:35?
6:31.
Thank you, 6:31.
There was Andrew and then Joe was the second.
Correct.
Yep.
Any further discussion? Yeah, Mrs. Munson?
Andrew Benson.
Yes.
Katrina Bakowitz.
Yes.
Doug Day.
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore.
Yes.
Ed Levine.
Yes. I do, actually, since we got sewer on our mind, we might as well just light on through. So while you're still here, Dave, thank you. Okay, it's still light out, drive safe there. Moving on to the next one, I'm going to move up to number 24. This thing, as we've been discussing over and over and over again, it's evolving. And this is exactly what I think Joe and Dave have been discussing. And to help you along, why don't you turn to, I guess, 1, 2, on the back of the second page of this agreement right here, okay? And what it basically says is how much allocation for gallons per day. And what we're doing is we're dropping this down to 200 gallons per day for the Warren Road, which means that per EDU. And what was that, what, 324, if my memory serves right, something like that? Come on up. Yeah. I think it's like 324 or 328. Anyways, but the point is that we still have the same number of gallons per day, which is 139,072. It's item E, I think it's number 2. What that does is it allocates more EDUs. So to Joe's question, what happens, we were going down this road with Cricket, because he's the one that has to allocate all these sewer EDUs, and it said, you know, we're getting a little tight here, we only got like 50 left. What's going to happen if somebody wants a 100-unit apartment house, or somebody wants to open up a cheese factory, or something up there, or a brewery, which would go into the sewer system, and it takes a lot of water, which means what's going to happen there, they're going to be basically frozen out. So this is why we move forward on this with the other 2 municipalities. I think we've come to common ground. I haven't heard anything from Monday's meeting if they pass this or not. Cuba Heights and you.
I haven't heard one way or the other, but I know the mayor, the village attorney, and the village engineer were all in favor, so I think it probably passed.
Okay, so
I don't know.
So what I'd like to do is move this forward, at least from the town of Lansing standpoint, to get this allocation down to 200, because eventually, and we've had these discussions before, eventually this will be metered. You won't have EDUs anymore. You'll have actual measuring flow. And what if this flow really wasn't 139,000 gallons? What if this flow actually was 65,000 gallons? All of a sudden you open up a lot more capacity. And it takes a tremendous amount of pressure off of our friends, which is those Cuba Heights, as they're looking at how they maintain their plant and upgrade it. So, that's where we are with that. So, do you have any more questions for our engineer? Anybody?
I've got questions about the contract here, but I don't think they're specifically to the engineer.
Okay. Okay. I'll move it. Anybody else?
Move resolution number 24.
I move resolution 24.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I've got a lot of questions about it.
Go ahead.
Okay, so did Andrew second it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Now we're having discussion.
Okay, so, what's the relationship of the 3 partners? Are we kind of the junior partner, or are we co-equal partners on this? How is that relationship? Just want some background here.
The way I see it is we're equal partners. It's like a 3-legged stool. Okay, 2 legs isn't going to make it. And what it is that we generate the product. It goes through the lines of the village of Lansing into the sewer treatment plant into the village of you guys. That's how our role works. So we have to have this agreement because we have to decide as a collective body what number of gallons per EDU, because we're still transitioning over. Are we all comfortable with? Now, a lot of this data that we're trying to collect, and we're using, we hope to go to a different meter eventually. This is where Cricket's going to jump in probably in the next couple of months and help us with this, is that we need to have accurate data, which means we have to have confidence in the meters that are measuring the flow. And to do that, one of the best ways to do that is Cherry Road, which is a closed system. There's going to be no other hookups to that. Having said that, you can put, it's like your control meters. So you say how many gallons we think we're using a day, here's the amount we are using a day. Now the other component of this, which we don't talk about a lot here, which is the elephant in the room, is the I&I, inflow and infiltration. That's when you have a bad rain, all of a sudden the water pours in from someplace, it spikes, it puts more water into the system that can help. The DEC usually allows you 1 of those per month for that spike. So a lot of times what the other goal is, and Dave or Guy, correct me if I'm wrong here, is now you look at the I&I. Now our systems are fairly new, especially the one that hopefully will be developed soon, which is the Jack Young Weinstein. That's brand new. But what if you have a system like maybe the town or city of Ithaca, where you have old pipes? That's very meticulous as you try to, do you do cameras? We hope to eventually have meters like we do for our water meters and be able to scope those so that you can see what the ping is. And I hope we use that same AMI data for that. And hopefully that'll help them a lot. The city of Ithaca just allocated $600,000 to look at 1 mile of pipe. That's an expensive endeavor. Our whole thing, though, is that I think we can take somewhat of a lead, or at least be an active participant in this, to help the metering system move faster. And that would be huge. Because now you're in the metering, you can see where the actual flow is. So like I said before, maybe it's not 139,073, maybe it's 65,000. We suspect it's more like 100 gallons than 200 gallons a day, especially all this new construction, which uses very little water. Spanish products use about 74 gallons a day. So we're moving in that direction, but we have to, with our partners, like we did with the DOT, we have to make them comfortable first.
Well, that brings me to 7D. It says that we're going to install meters on all the districts within a year of the agreement. And I'm wondering, are we really prepared to do that quickly?
The answer is yes.
Okay.
Right, Kirka? Yes, sir.
Okay. It seems like an aggressive project. I just wanted to make sure that you're really prepared to do it that quickly. Because, when I'm reading over this whole thing, it reads a lot like the village of Cuba Heights and Lansing are telling Lansing you have to do all these things. There's very little that Lansing pushes back. So if we don't fulfill our half of the agreement, they can come in and do it and charge us for it. Whereas if they don't fulfill their half of the agreement, it doesn't. There isn't as much talking about that. And
Okay, let me give you the half full,
okay.
not the half empty. The half full version is because we have such a great relationship with them, we have that new sewer district, which is sewer district number 1. That would never have happened unless we had a great relationship with those two. And it took a lot of trust, a lot of nurturing to do that. First thing you have to do is be able to talk to the mayors, which wasn't done for quite a while. Not throwing stones, I'm just saying that's just the way it was. So as we go on these tours, and it's a new day, it's the first thing we tell people, how can we help you? One of the things that the village of Lansing is very grateful about is I think that the developers are going to donate, what, $800,000 to their system, something along those lines, Dave? Back into their system to do this. So it's a win-win situation. And if we get this metering done, what a tremendous amount of pressure it takes out the village of Cuba Heights. Because they were looking at, do we expand, and where can we expand? Can't expand. How much is it going to take to expand? Who's going to take that? It's going to put on the backs of who? So, if we can actually show that the capacity there is a lot more than they think, you really are at a point where you don't have to, that the village of Cuba Heights doesn't have to consider expansion, which is huge. They just took out a bond to do new heads, which are the filtrate systems, and that was millions of dollars. So they're also very sensitive. So we can come in as an active participant, as a good neighbor. Like I said, you talk to Brent Cross, he loves the phrase partners. And we've shown it with the DOT situation. Where they thought that we were going to cut this deal, and what the concern was, through the grapevines, that the village of Cuba Heights and the village of Lansing were going to be left out to dry, and town Lansing was going to cut the deal with the DOT. And how many times have you heard me say, you talk to them first, when they're happy, you come to us?
We were all saying that.
Absolutely. And I think that sends a very strong message. But it starts from this chair to do that and radiates out that we're not budgeting. And I told Brian that privately, I said, you know what, here's the sequence you need to do. It's a suggestion. You can follow the advice or not, and so be it.
Well, I read on page 3 that the town of Lansing has to update our local ordinance to whatever degree the village and the other village update their code. So if they say, if they have a stricter sewer code, we have to match that. And we're required to in this contract, which I'm concerned about. The town of Lansing shall update as needed to enforce local law, provide for rules, imposing equal or more restrictive than those set forth in the village of Cuba Heights and village of Lansing. And my question here to Guy is, can we really sign a contract that says future boards must update their rules to these other municipality standards for the next 40 years, which is the length of this contract?
If we want to send our effluent to a federally regulated treatment plant, then yes, we're going to have to comply with the federal treatment standards, just like Dryden and the town of Ithaca have to do for the Ithaca area wastewater treatment plant. So there's another intermunicipal agreement that you don't see between the two villages where the village of Lansing has to agree to do this too. So the reason that you see language that says we will abide by the standards that are set for sewage treatment is because the treatment plant has to maintain its permit. As part of its permit process, it, as a municipal operator, has to be able to go to its collection points, do investigations, do cleanups, do repairs, and it's required to mandate that people that put effluent into its system follow the rules. So if your question is theoretically, what if they say only giraffes are allowed to service the outtakes, And could this clause be used to require us to purchase giraffes? I would say that on paper, it looks like perhaps that's what it says, but in reality, no, that's not how it works. What that clause has to do is making sure that the town of Lansing and the village of Lansing, as entities contributing flow to a federally regulated treatment plant, comply with the requirements of that plant and the mandates for tertiary treatment, phosphorus removals, etc. So if they start noticing that their flows are very acidic, their pipes are being damaged, there's something in the lines that's causing damage, and they trace it back to the town of Lansing, that district is going to have to figure out what it needs to do to pre-treat or get an industrial treatment permit or fix the problem.
Okay.
That's what that clause is really about. And in order to get the original ability to hook up to the system, that was mandated.
Okay.
So it was lifted almost verbatim out of the existing village intermunicipal agreement, which was lifted almost verbatim out of the Ithaca area wastewater treatment terms. It's pretty standard stuff, but there might be other ways of saying it.
Okay. Question, it says here at the bottom of page 2 that the district boundaries are shown in Exhibit A, which is the map on the back. And the map on the back shows the extension that we're going to have a public hearing on next month. And are we saying that that district is part of it? Are we kind of approving the district subtly by saying that the district boundaries are more than...
No, we're defining that as part of the service area, but we can't provide service until it's actually a district.
Okay.
It's sort of like if we went to a 12C system where we declared the entire town as a service area, we'd still have to get the main to be able to deliver water somewhere. So what this intermunicipal agreement is saying that that's within our defined service area, and if that district is formed, then we can start providing service to it. If it doesn't actually add any allocation either.
So if we want to create another extension somewhere else, we have to modify this agreement to have a larger service area?
Well, it depends on the flow. And yes, if we want to expand our service area, create a larger amount of acreage that's covered by a sewer district or a wastewater plant or treatment area or whatever we want to call it, yes, we have to go back to the villages and get approval to expand that area, because they want to look at the potential amount of flow, including unplanned for flow, inflow, infiltration, and make sure that it's within their capacity and isn't going to trigger overflow situations that can result in permits, fines, and things like that. This particular district, that's just part of an extension to the Warren Road Sewer District for the 3 properties that are affected and the little hanging chad from Cornell, doesn't actually increase the allocation for the Warren Road Sewer District. It basically just does what we do a lot in some of the water districts, where we only had the first 300 feet along the road in the frontage, but someone actually develops and now it has to go back and cover the rest. There was already allocation within the Warren Road Sewer District for the county land. This is actually just putting some of it down on paper and using some of that allocation, much of which, as Ed said, we picked up on the EDUs because the numbers changed. And the metering could let the numbers change again, but I guess we'll see.
Okay. Let's see.
It's what you call addition through subtraction.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand what's going on through this.
This, by the way, isn't the last step. There'll be a series of steps as we continue to go towards metering. But we have to make our partners comfortable first. And keep going with your questions, it's fine by me.
Okay, number 14, during this agreement, town land shall designate an individual as the operator of their respective sewer collection systems. Who is that for the town of Lansing? Cricket? Okay. I thought so, but I just wanted to be sure because it doesn't say here.
I might give it a Sunday.
I suspect she would be fine. I haven't found
the guys well. Number 24 says that the parties agree that disputes should be settled through arbitration. Does that mean they must be settled through arbitration?
No. No, it gives the parties the right to agree to go to arbitration. They're not required to.
Couldn't we agree to go to arbitration without a clause like this?
That's correct.
Okay, so this is just encouraging arbitration. It doesn't really have any binding or significance other than that?
No, it has 5 sub-clauses that define the type of arbitration to try to limit the expenses of arbitration, because this is a holdover from the prior agreement, and the problem with arbitration is that it is now actually more expensive and takes longer than litigation. So once you create a market, it will consume the resources you pour into it.
Okay. I think that covers my question for now. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
No.
Okay, this is all.
So we have Doug Dake and then Andrew.
Yeah.
Second it, right? Andrew Benson,
Yes.
Katrina Binkowitz.
Yes.
Doug Dake,
Yes.
Joe Whitmore,
Yes.
Ed Levine.
Yes. Number 15, motion authorizing supervisor to sign Myers Park Tree Planting Grant Agreement with Tompkins County. Patrick? Yes. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
This is a grant, right?
Yes, it is.
I move to be accepted.
Got a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Hall?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Item 16, motion authorizing supervisor to sign Lansing Youth Commission program agreement for 2019 with Corona Project Extension of Tompkins County.
I'll move that. I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
Whoa.
Andrew and Joe.
Okay. Andrew, well, we can't hear you very well, Doc. I'm not sure why.
I'll move it.
Okay.
And Joe seconds it.
Joe seconded.
Patrick's fault. He couldn't have his mics.
Yeah, it's like odd and even. Any further discussion? Mrs. Hall?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
17, motion authorizing supervisor to sign Inserto and Company CPA LLP engagement letter dated May 9, 2019 for year ending December 31st. Is that right, 2018?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's for the audit for last year.
Okay. Someone like to make a motion?
I'll move it.
In a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I've got a question. We're approving this tonight, May 13th, and it says they're starting to work on the 13th. And
Today's
today's the 15th,
Yep.
they're starting to work on the 13th. So they're just assuming that this is going to be signed and then they start early?
It's the same that we signed every year, so why not?
Okay. I'm just noticing that. That feels a little odd to me.
And that's a good question, and I respect that. On here, if I may have a discussion, Mimi is one of the people that's working on this. We got some information today for her. She goes, Ed, I sent board members inquiries on Monday that we send every year and no one has responded. Can you please remind them tonight to respond to the questionnaire ASAP? Has anybody got?
I got it. I called, left a message saying I'd like to talk to them, and I never got a response.
Okay. So I'll share that with the rest of the board if they want to.
And I thought you could answer right on the email, but you can't,
Okay. So I would give,
type in stuff. You
I
can't.
don't call them again, but
I may make a
she gave me
suggestion.
the option to call and never
Okay.
responded.
It's not pointing fingers, it's just, I just want to follow up on that. What I recommend is that people call Charmaine tomorrow morning. Charmaine will not be here Friday, and see when they can maybe do it by phone.
Call Charmaine to talk.
To see when they're available to talk,
Okay.
okay?
I will send Charmaine a note.
Because Charmaine will not be there on Friday, so if they're all day tomorrow, maybe you can have, when I had the questions sent, when we talked this afternoon, it was like 15 minutes. Okay? Any further discussion?
They will be, are you saying they're going to?
Here.
They were here the last 3 days, I believe. Once again, she's in at 7:30 in the morning. Call her to see when they're available. And they may be able to do it by phone.
Okay.
That's what I tried to do, and never got a response, so
This is just a follow-up. I'm sure they're
I'm sure.
Mrs.
All
Hall?
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
So, 18, motion authorizing the supervisor to appoint Kevin Wiskowski to liaison officer to local.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Any further discussion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
19, resolution hiring Mars Park campground manager for the town of Lansing.
I will move that.
I'll second. Any further discussion?
I have a question, because I'm not sure about paying people at the rate by the week. And how does that work with New York State labor law? I was wondering how you could help me with that.
Well, maybe Patrick will chime in too.
I can't speak to the legal part of it. I can do that, but this
Okay.
is something that we, for the 20 years that I've been here, if he worked hourly, we would be paying much more than this, obviously. So I think it's a fair deal for the town.
Well, isn't that a joint compensation? It's not just...
Yeah, it's not just money.
There's an in-kind also part,
He is-
right?
Right.
Yes, yeah, he is in the campground also, so obviously he stays there throughout the summer with no cost, so.
So you have a 24-hour security.
Correct, we have passive security, he cleans the bathrooms, nights and weekends, so he deals with whatever issues that come up in the park at certain times, so.
I understand that it's a good deal for him, it's a good deal for us. I just want to make sure, because I've not heard of an arrangement, how this works through New York State labor law. I was wondering if there's anything I should be concerned about here, or does this seem reasonable?
Well, I haven't looked at this position or that specific question, and I could have, but I didn't know it was coming up. So my answer would be that, one, if he put in more than 40 hours per week, that this would not be an FSLA exempt position, so you'd have to track it for overtime purposes. You should be keeping a time log. And two, to the extent that the combination of in-kind contribution and this salary meets the minimum wage applicable in New York, which I believe upstate is $10.14 an hour now, something like that?
11:10.
11.10? Okay, as long as it meets that minimum, I think you're fine, but if there's something to look at, we can adjust it next month, before there's a violation, if he's just being appointed now. I don't know how you calculate the in-kind value, but I can't imagine that this is, I don't see a problem just looking at it, but if you want to get into Article 10, labor standards, you probably could find one if you look long enough.
I'm sure you could with most any position if you tried really hard. I just want to make sure that we're not...
Yeah, I mean, you may be hearkening back to the public officer rules where you can't, and this isn't a public officer.
No, I understand that, but it's just unusual to pay them by the week with no hours attached to it, saying we expect them to work so many hours or something like that.
I don't know what the actual job description itself looks
I mean,
like.
it went through the county, so I'm sure Charmaine did her due diligence and
Yeah.
researching this, and
Okay.
has been an ongoing thing throughout. the
Yeah, it's a civil service position,
Yeah.
and there's a job description for it. I don't know what the hours allocation are, but
It's got an allocation of hours, theoretical at least.
I can't speak to that part. I don't know.
but I mean, if
Okay.
if there's an overtime issue, then I guess it should be looked at.
I think it's 20 hours. It's $200 a week, so I don't think we're talking close to overtime.
Well, yeah, no, but if the person works 60 hours a week, and this is not an FLSA exempt position, I don't know if it would be or not if they're a campground manager. I don't
What
know
would
if,
you count as working hours, when they actually have to do something as opposed to them,
you'd be digging deep into Article 10 at that point. I don't know. I can look at it if there's a reason. I don't know. I've never looked at this before.
I guess you could say a lifeguard does the same thing.
Right.
They sit there unless there is a need that has transpired. In this case, maybe that the bathroom overflowed, or that they need toilet paper, or that somebody's too drunk and doesn't want to leave. I mean, those are things that are basically, there's an action that requires another action.
And I assume that it flexes based on whether there's a lot of attendance, so it's not going to be a standard amount.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's based on usage of the park on any given day.
looks like there's over 40 hours in a given week.
He will
I think-
complain.
I think you better let us know.
I hope he doesn't, but.
Okay, any other discussion?
No.
Mrs. Hall?
Andrew Benson.
Yes.
Katrina Binkowitz.
Yes.
Doug Dave.
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore.
Yes.
Ed Levine.
Yes. Resolution hiring part-time seasonal laborers for Park and Rec for the town of Lansing.
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Hall?
Andrew Benson.
Yes.
Katrina Binkowitz.
Yes.
Doug Dave.
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore.
Yes.
Ed Levine.
Yes. Item 21, a resolution updating employee Thomas Pellicet's position and job classification. I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
Andrew Benson.
Yes.
Katrina Binkowitz.
Yes.
Doug Dave.
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore.
Yes.
Ed Levine.
Yes. 22, resolution declaring 1992 International Bus, 2 X-Mark mowers, and a Kubota tractor as excess property and authorizing disposal or sale thereof.
I'll move that.
I'll second it. Any further discussion?
I'm just curious, we have a bus?
Well, yeah, it's been a bus slash water truck slash.
Oh, okay.
So,
Makes the tractor.
speaking of which, and Katrina, this might be in your wheelhouse. Mr. Reiger, am I pronouncing his name right? Reiger from Salt Point, he was asking for a water tank.
Which is able to be towed behind the tractor?
A vehicle.
A vehicle.
Or a utility vehicle.
Okay.
They do not have.
No, but that water tank's for the
Not yet.
purpose?
No, that water tank's been removed from that and it's set up in a new operation with our.
That's a large, it's a very different size, the
Yeah.
size that
Yeah,
we're
this thing
talking
you're not gonna
about.
tow with your car or pickup.
In one
And it's
drop,
already been transported onto another,
Yes, sir.
well, in that case, I'm good. I just saw that, I thought of that, and through the ingenuity of the highway department, how they jerry-rigged that, I appreciate that.
Central Tractor Supply offers a 35, 70 gallon, 100 gallon tank, something like that, at a pretty reasonable cost. I want to say like 100, 150 gallon poly tank is maybe a couple $100.
Okay.
So, I mean, just throwing it out there for whoever's information might be looking for that.
Great, thank you. Nothing else, Mrs. Hall?
Andrew Benson.
Yes.
Katrina Binkowitz.
Yes.
Doug Dave.
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore.
Yes.
Ed Levine.
Yes, resolution approving the standard workday for reporting of elected and appointed officials.
all of that.
I'll second it. Any further discussion? Mrs. Hall?
Andrew Benson.
Yes.
Katrina Binkowitz.
Yes.
Doug Dave.
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore.
Yes.
Ed Levine.
Yes. 25, resolution and final order approving consolidated water district outside user extension number 1.
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Could I get a understanding of what's going on here? There's all these numbers jumping back and forth, this bond was this, and I couldn't tell which ones were following each other and which ones were separate from the description in the thing.
Okay, number 25.
No, this, you're talking like 26. We're doing.
Oh, sorry, okay.
No, we're in 25, resolution.
Yeah, I'm talking about 26, yeah, sorry.
So, you want to hold for a moment then? When you
Yeah.
get to number 26?
Yeah,
You want to
sorry.
keep your power dry?
Yeah.
We're at 25.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I should price at 25.
No, that's okay. All right. Andrew Benson.
Yes.
Katrina Binkowitz.
Yes.
Doug Dave.
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore.
Yes.
Ed Levine.
Yes. Okay, item 26. Resolution authorizing the issuance of a $67,000 bond in anticipation of renewal note number 01-19.
Yeah, I was having trouble following all those bonds, got changed to this and followed
Would
this.
we have
That's
to,
okay.
someone make the motion first, and then the second, and then the discussion?
Yes, I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Thank you.
So,
No,
Ed made it.
Maybe Joe second.
So you have questions about it, Joe? or you-
I'm just trying to understand what this whole line, or this bond was this, and this bond was that.
All right.
Which ones are following each other, what's going on?
So you want an explanation of the barn, or you're okay?
I want to explain this first paragraph where it says this bond was doing this, and this one was this.
All right. This is the, unless I'm wrong, and I can be corrected, this is the Drake Water District, the original one. It started at both ends before we did the number 4?
Yes.
4. Number 4, which connected it. Okay, this is both ends that were started way back when, and this was a bond anticipation renewal note. So that's what we first start out with. Now, every year, the board gives authorization to the supervisor to negotiate when it goes over. And the idea is to go to a band. So you lock it in for so many years. The unique situation here is that the interest rates are so much lower for a barn than a band that we keep renewing it every year. And if you can see how it goes, it first started out, looks at 145,000, then it went down to 137.4, and then the next barn went down to 133.5, and it goes up. Okay, so you understand?
No, okay, so these are all, it's dropping each year down to, now it's like 15,000, I think?
No, 67,000
67,000?
is what the resolution is. Yeah, that second paragraph goes down to 67. It's unique in the fact the interest rates are so low that it doesn't warrant to going to a bond anticipation note. Normally, the sequence would have been, okay, we'll do the barn for 1 year to kind of hold it to see where things are, let things settle, and then we'll go to municipal solutions. Here are the 3 options, where you want to go with this. And we did the same thing, I think, with when we consolidated, maybe it was the bone plane, another one, the barns keep coming. That one was like 2.13%. I mean, and if, I guess we keep doing barns unless it tells us otherwise, because it's best for the people that have that debt service. So that's where we are. Now it's at 2.35% is what the rate is now. So that's the answer to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
I just want to clarify, Ed, you made the motion and Joe seconded it?
Yes.
I just want to make sure we have that correct.
And any other questions? If not, we'll move forward. Saul?
Andrew Benson.
Yes.
Katrina Binkowitz.
Yes.
Doug Dake.
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore.
Yes.
Ed Levine.
Yes. 27, scheduling, resolution scheduling public hearing for review of annual stormwater report. CJ now will get a shot at that one too then, right? Okay, so this is just to schedule a public hearing.
I'll move that resolution.
I'll second it.
So we get to see this report when?
You've seen it twice already, so I'm not sure. It was in the report.
Okay.
It's right here, and it was in your mailbox on Friday, and it was emailed to you, so
Wasn't in my mailbox on Friday.
it was in everybody else's.
You have a month also to look at it.
No, I take that back. That one was not in the mailbox Friday.
But you have a
That
month
was-
to look at
That
it
was
also.
here today,
So
sorry.
it is today,
I
okay.
take that back, sorry.
Got it. Thank you.
I just got that today. so.
Yeah, okay, so it's sitting in my mailbox, and I'll take a look at it.
And this
No,
is,
it's right in the packet with.
I haven't
Yeah.
grabbed my packet.
so
Oh,
He's
okay.
looking at my back.
I'm gonna
Oh,
go back
okay.
first.
All
Got it.
right.
so this will be at 6:33 on the 19th of June.
Correct.
So I have a motion and a second. Which we do, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mrs. Hall?
Andrew Benson.
Yes.
Katrina Binkowitz.
Yes.
Doug Dake.
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore.
Yes.
Ed Levine.
Yes.
Sorry.
Number 29, it's not the first time it's happened. Approve audit and budget modifications.
I'd like to take a quick look at the vouchers for a second, before we do that.
Sure. I signed ones that you did.
Okay.
That makes me feel better.
Well, one of them wasn't complete when I was going over.
I don't know which one it was, because they're all,
The phone number, or I think it's phone or gas was incomplete, and got all the bills together. That'll take me a minute, so we might not.
well, why don't we just take like a 5-minute break?
Okay.
All right. I had a question on this voucher. Our procurement policy says we need to get 3 different quotes for everything over 1,000. I was wondering what the other quotes came in at.
Which one do you make a reference to?
The signs.
Signs.
Sign.
Yep.
I don't think we got 3 quotes.
Anything over 1,000, we're supposed to get 3 quotes, that's a $5,000 voucher.
Well, I speak to that, especially sign, and obviously it becomes very limited access. I mean, I run into this a lot more this year than I have in the past with a lot of different scenarios and actually getting people to give me quotes back. The fact, so it becomes tougher and tougher for when you're doing specialty things to find the people to get the quotes from.
Okay.
So, you know, I would speak that, I know we went through a process with specialty type signs here a few years ago that we tried to work out for the school. So we actually got the quotes, the signs came, they were nothing like they were supposed to be. The school in turn, obviously then being upset, turned around, and then Boosters Club, I believe, spent almost double the money to have those signs refaced. So past experience, I would look at this aspect as it's a reliable vendor that produces what, you know, what the specialty is. That,
So it's somewhat interesting that we talked to the auditors today and the procurement policy. They're going to have a recommendation that we increase that limit. Because they're just shaking their heads saying this is impossible to find some of these bids. So that'll be one of the recommendations that the auditors will come up with, which once again, I did not. That came right out of left field. So I think to your point, you know, here's a prime example of, are there 3 specialties out there to do that? What if there isn't? And your experience was, I would imagine you would have mentioned something if there was 3. Just like we did with the, let's see, air conditioner. We did that. We did it for, I think, the doors we're looking at, amongst other things. So I think where your judgment comes in is that if these things are actually realistically doable or not.
It's also buying local, which we are encouraged to do, obviously. It's within town. And these signs mirror the signs that are already there in place. So we went with the same vendor.
So when you used this in the past, when the boosters were there, is that because it was donated money before? I guess it probably wouldn't be an issue for the procurement policy. But I think also we tried this procurement policy for, what, it's been a year, 2 years? And we're finding some
Glitches.
It gets very, I know, it gets very frustrating dealing with this all the time. You go to vendors and they just get pissed off. And they won't give you a quote because they know you're not going to go with them. They need their quote in order to satisfy the procurement policy. So you end up having to go find somebody else, and 95 times we already know who the lowest one is going to be. So we're starting to get, especially at my level, we're starting to get a lot of mad equipment dealers around the area that don't want to deal with us anymore because we keep asking them for quotes and we don't do any business with them.
Well, you may not get 3 quotes then, would you?
No, usually you don't.
Because they say click. So I think, in all fairness, we try to implement this a certain way, and I think if we go revisit this with an open mind, to say, okay, what is the real, where is the sweet spot here where people will actually be active participants? Because what I think you're doing now is you're actually being counterproductive. I mean, now we have a reason for it.
Right.
Did they give a number as to what they want to change that to?
The auditors?
The auditors, yeah.
I'd have to get back to you on that. But the impression that Mimi had, and you can ask her when she asked you those questions, is that she was, wow, you know, I think it was $500. She was looking at some of these things for $500. And once again, don't quote me on this, but she said that some of these are too low. I mean, they just, how can you get 3 verbal quotes or whatever for this price? And now we have feedback from people who actually have to implement it, which I take very seriously because you're the ones going to have to make this work. And what kind of relationships do you have when your vendors all of a sudden they don't answer any? Who are you supposed to go to now?
Well, realistically, we're more unproductive because we're out chasing quotes around when
Right.
we should be doing something
I
else.
hear you on that.
And you have to put off the time of actually accomplishing the job.
Correct.
So what do you think the number should be for 3 active quotes?
I'd like to see that 10,000 to be perfectly honest.
Okay.
with you.
Is that something we want to move at our next meeting?
No, that's what the auditors say,
Yeah, I mean, let's see what the auditors say, but I mean,
So let me rephrase that. Is that something you want to discuss at our next meeting to see if we can adjust this? Because
Yes.
you're coming into the season now where you're buying a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah. I don't want to put you guys guys off, but I also want to see what the auditors say, because they might say 12 or 15. You know,
So I said, so that voucher doesn't personally have anything to do with me, but if it's additional off the table, I personally can find one. I'll pay for it myself if I need to, if we want to pull it off the table. I mean, I think it was, you know, for a right reason, good, and, you know, I think it was just, it's a struggle with that sort of stuff to come up with the ability to have it done and have it be professional.
And it's already long overdue.
Right, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we write on the voucher that you're having trouble finding 3 quotes for signage, and you're having trouble finding vendors who do the signage to the quality you want, which are the things I'm hearing from you.
Well, yeah, so the things that I do, I mean, obviously all your traffic signs, stuff like that, that's all state bid stuff. We make our own, I mean, when you get into different things like that, it's, you know, to have the vinyl cut machines and do the facing and stuff, it's
Yeah.
you know, big money, so.
So I think if we note on the voucher why we didn't do what the procurement said, I think that would satisfy me.
Okay.
And those are the 2 reasons I'm hearing from you, is you're having trouble getting vendors who create the quality that you want, and that you're having trouble getting quotes from vendors because they don't feel like you're actually going to use them. So if we could put that on the voucher so that there's a record of that.
Why don't we just put it in the resolution that, that if this gets passed, that it was passed because one concern, and you can use the language you want on there, so it's right there in the resolution when we pass it, if that's acceptable.
You're going to have to tell me what voucher number and everything it is, because it's not.
It's sticking out.
To a certain extent, it's already part of the record. Go ahead.
Yeah, we'll just write it on the voucher.
Okay. Any other discussion? Don, Mrs. Hall?
Well, nobody's.
You got to make a motion, right?
Are you sure?
I thought we did.
No.
No.
All right.
No, we just.
We'll play back the tape.
I move it.
I second it, okay?
Andrew moves that.
Now I can't hold them back.
You want to second it, Adam?
No, you're gonna, one of you two.
Sure.
Okay, Joe seconds it.
I thought I heard Ed say you seconded.
He did.
Okay, Ed seconds.
And then he gave it back.
Okay.
Can he second it?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm a voting member. Okay. Mrs. Hall?
Andrew Benson.
Yes.
Katrina Binkowitz.
Yes.
Doug Dake.
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore.
Yes.
Ed Levine.
Yes. Okay, board member reports. What I would, try to keep it to 5 minutes. What I would recommend in the future is that if you have a lot of stuff, feel free to send it to Mrs. Munson in a timely fashion, and we can always put that in the report.
I just have one thing. I contacted the high school principal and the music teacher because I would like our town to honor Ellie Howell. And I'm just going to read you one paragraph, and then Katrina and I are going to get a resolution and hopefully invite her and honor her. And so this came from the high school principal. Each year, thousands of students audition for conference all-state ensembles, and only the top junior and senior musicians are selected to participate. Selection is determined by the student's NISMA solo rating, teacher recommendation, adjudicator recommendation, NISMA zone representation, school ensemble participation, and the student's participation in other performing organizations. This is all singing. Being selected for a conference all-state ensemble is the highest state honor a New York high school musician can receive. And she received it, and then she was also nominated to go to the All-Eastern Honors Assembly. So, I would like to do this next. I don't think we've ever had a young person go that far in music.
I don't know. Is that something that we want to bring them in and have a nice presentation with a plaque, or how do you want to do this?
Yeah, sure, yes. At least a framed resolution.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's it for me.
Okay. Joe?
Where are we headed first? I'd like to talk about the Conservation Council and how we can move forward on naming some people onto it.
That was in the work session.
You want to do that in the work session?
That's where it's listed.
What I would like them to do, like we do with every board, is have them fill out an application.
Oh, okay, let's talk about that. I don't think that's a bad idea. Fill out an application.
And then we can move on at our next meeting, maybe?
If you get the applications in.
We can get an application.
And to fall around here. The thing that I'm concerned about, first of all, I love volunteers, as you know. Nothing wrong with that, I don't want to throw a wet blanket on them. But also with our resolution, when we formed this, we also had a pretty good criteria of what we're looking for. I have no problem with people being on this board if they want to do the work, because I know they want to do it as a volunteer, and they want to do it for the good of the town. And as long as that's the reason why, and it's not for a personal agenda, it's not because I want to do this, this, and this, then I'm all for it, because then it's for the good of the town. I think, first of all, that the application should be filled out, and when we talked about this thing, it was about, with the resolution, here's the criteria. We had a farmer, we had a business person, we had a young person, I think there was a fourth one there, there's also 2 board members, and there's also, CJ should be on that board, in my opinion. But those are 7.
Another one.
Have another hippo on us. So having said that,
I can staff report.
well, my point is that I think she gives us great leadership, she gives us great insight, and that's not an insult to anyone else. But what my point is, and she just left. The ball has had enough hippos for tonight, thank you. So, well, my point is that if all these people want to, I mean, there is a ton of work.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm all in favor of them participating, don't get me wrong. I'm concerned that with enthusiasm, you get one group in there that has all the same likes. And I've learned, quite frankly, a lot more with a diverse group than I have with the same group. Because it widens, for me at least, it widens that lens. I'm just saying that that's something that, first thing I would recommend is they submit an application, why they want to do this, forget what the qualifications are. They can be on the working staff. I have no problem with that. But the actual board itself, what group do we want to have, I think it should be diverse.
I just want to get moving on this. As I look at CJ's work plans, I keep seeing conservation advisory, he's going to do this, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. And, you know, there's a lot of work to be done, and I want to get it moving.
Well, if my memory serves me right, didn't we way back when allocate $5,000 for this, and didn't we ask them to get started on this? I mean, way back when in January, did we say that or not? I mean, I thought
We did, and we have, but we didn't have the specific parameters that you're requesting now. We didn't talk about.
I mean, personal opinion is that the working group can start next month. And if CJ wants to give some criteria what that scope of work will be, another scope of work.
Hold on a second, okay, so we have the CAC and you're gonna appoint members? Like,
That's what I want to do.
There should be members on there from all different criteria of the resolution.
Ed wants some basic biography about their qualifications and what they bring to the committee.
Just like you do for the ZBA or the planning board or any other volunteer group.
I'll move this forward.
so,
Do you have an application that we can pass out?
yeah, it's the appointed board applicant.
Okay.
So what I'll have Sue do, or I'll ask Sue to do, is contact each person that each board member nominates and send them an application. Does that sound good? I've only just gotten your list, so I don't know if there's anyone else. but
Okay.
If there's anyone else, you'll email me and let me know.
Okay. Sounds
So
good.
all the board members should, not just Jim.
Yeah.
All right.
You go down farther back.
I'm scared.
One thing, I have some of the names on the list I submitted. So
Okay, great. No, I mean, I don't know what.
he's been collecting.
I've been collecting.
One of the things that I would be careful of is that if you have relatives that are on the board, or you're also on this board, if something comes up that's controversial, who's going to recuse themselves? And keep that in mind. This resolution was, which one is it here? Looks like it's from General Municipal Law 239-X. And it gives a whole different criteria here. But that's the other thing is that, I applaud their enthusiasm. but at some point, is it counterintuitive if you get into a controversial area, like I said, who's going to take the step back?
Well, let's do this step. CJ is going to have applications sent out to everybody that expresses an interest, and the board members are all going to feed people that way. Let's get a list of people who've responded, and see if we can't pull together a group from that.
If they don't fit the criteria, that doesn't mean they can't be on the board, they just can't be a voting member of that group. They can still do the work.
Let's see what list we get. And see what
Well, I've seen what the list is, and 6 of them are from Cornell. So,
But
and I'm not throwing stones at this, but I'm looking for the farmer, I'm looking for the business person also.
I think we had 2
That's
farmers
fine.
that were on the list.
That's fine. I'm open-minded to this, but let's see the applications go.
But I think also it is, what they're going to be discussing is a lot of technical, scientific stuff. So you want a range of areas of focus.
Totally
And
agree.
we have
And
a lot of resources.
I think if CJ can give us the scope of work as
Yeah.
far as what is the first workload that we're looking for?
That's a great
You
idea.
mean in terms of what a CAC does?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. There's actually a nice little fact sheet that DEC has put out that's like, what do conservation advisory councils do? And it's a nice little primer on that, but essentially it's quite a workload, but I'd say the 2 main pieces they do is the preparation of the open space inventory and natural resources inventory. A lot of data, a lot of mapping. And then the second piece is monitoring of conservation easements, which is great because they can help with agricultural monitoring of agricultural easements and then any town-held conservation easements they could help with also. So,
I mean, those 2 pieces right there, I think are going to keep somebody busy for a while. And I don't want to tamper any enthusiasm. Don't get me wrong. Okay, so I'm open-minded to all this, but I think we need to get some parameters.
I'm finding a process. Right now, I find the process for moving from where we are now to having a board that can start working.
Okay,
Parameters are good.
parameters are good.
so we'll go ahead and send them the application as well as the fact sheet about conservation advisory councils and the resolution, say this is kind of what we're looking for in terms of the makeup of the board. We'll ask them to submit the resolution or the applications by, let's call it mid-June, June 12th, a week before planning or before town board. So you have time to
Can we
review.
also put this on the website and maybe, I don't know if it's through the Lansing Star or Talk With Us Weekly
Yeah.
to get the word out that we're looking for people.
Sure.
Okay, so we'll work with Deb and Jesse to get that word out, and we'll ask for them to submit them by June 12th. That's about a month to get an application together, and then we'll ask them to come and actually be present for the June 19th meeting, so you could interview the candidates.
Yep,
That's that good?
excellent.
All right.
Okay. Anything else? Joe?
Oh, sorry. I went to the intermunicipal organization, the water one, and they're going to be having a meeting on May 20th. And this is going to be looking at the Wasco watershed rules and regulations. This is a learning experience for people coming to it. It's 4:15 at the town hall boardroom, and I'm encouraging town board members to come and see what Wasco Lake is doing to preserve their lake.
So where is this going to be held?
Ithaca Town Hall, down the old post office, downtown Ithaca.
Okay.
It's going to be at 4:15 on May 20th. Planning board. I'm really impressed with the way the meeting went with the planning board up here along the desks and having stuff projected on the wall. I think it really gave a sense that the board was listening to the audience as they were facing the audience. I think that it gave everybody the ability to follow what was going on much more easily. I think that format looked really good, and I haven't gotten a lot of feedback from the public yet, but I think that worked out really well. I appreciate you talking in front of the board as well, and saying, here's the process. Do we have any kind of idea when we're going to start doing these trainings?
Well, CJ and I are working on that because there's a couple different ideas. Without sending you any more hippos. A couple more ideas is that, do you try to gear it towards each board? You try to, or do you do a generic one to say, okay, if you have somebody who's passionate, how do you address that? Okay? Also the fact that I think, in all fairness, addressing the group also to say, you also have a responsibility here for a respectful dialogue that goes both ways. And that's why these privilege of the floor are out all the time. And to Chairman Kayward's credit, he allows me 5 minutes to just generically talk about things because I'll never attack. I'll try to just suggest, or as Katrina would say, nudge, or whatever, and that's fine. So you can talk. So having said that, as we try to respectfully move in that direction, because with this zoning coming up, those discussions, let's face it, we had the discussion today with CJ, this land use is an overhaul. This is not a 5-year capital plan tweak and then we're going to do another one, another tweak. This is something that hasn't been done since 2003, so you have the potential of some changes. And this is where I think we want to continue that momentum for the public to say, here's what we're doing. Because I think for a lot of people, some of the issues on the planning board were teachable moments for them in a very uncomfortable way. So we will continue that. We've done the microphones, which are huge. CJ does the first hour, I think, for the group, and then we move up here at 6:30. I think that's working out. It's being more consistent. So I think we're making progress.
So what are you leaning towards? Are you leaning towards separate kinds of trainings for each board, or are you leaning towards a generic one?
I would do a generic one, and I would try one for Monday for planning board, Tuesday for ZBA, and Wednesday for town board.
And then people can show up in whichever one they...
That way it's interchangeable, absolutely.
Right. I like that, because I think that you're going to find that there's not one time that fits each board perfectly.
Totally
You don't
agree.
get perfect attendance on every board every time.
And there may be one where there's a makeup session afterwards if somebody's on vacation that week. I mean, there always falls in that, especially this time of year.
Yep.
But we'll be flexible.
The Community Dispute Resolution Center folks suggested for town board Wednesday, June 5th. If you're available, in 3 weeks from today, I believe.
Yeah,
If
what
not,
time?
I can do other dates where we can check in with them on other dates.
And that would be probably at what, 6:30?
Yeah, it could be the same time as this meeting, that way it's easy to remember.
Let's see what we have on the 5th here. Do you have anything?
I'm booked on the 5th.
Citizens preparing this court.
Well, on the 5th also, we have the Citizens Preparedness Training at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
That's for the emergency training. So it looks like it's going to be the 12th maybe, or the 26th of
Okay,
June.
I will ask about those 2 dates.
Why don't you do that, and then we'll see if
Yep.
the power plant can fit the other one in for their presentation. Okay. Good. Anything else, Joe?
Wednesday, May 29th, 6 to 9, there's going to be a presentation from the folks at Holyoke, Massachusetts. There, the town converted their power plant from a coal plant to a solar farm. Similar thing, they had a dying coal plant. It was the center of their town. It was a real hit when that coal plant was powering down, and they managed to turn it into a really positive thing for their town. And I know, Ed, you're going to be there. And I'm just encouraging everyone else to come and see how another town faced a similar issue that we did and was able to push forward. And maybe they're going to have some ideas that will help with this data center.
You will be there? Can you take it for us, please?
Might do.
Okay, thank you.
And finally, I'd like to ask, we're coming up on June again. Do we still have the rainbow flag? Do we need someone to fill out a application?
There's a policy where you have to fill it out every year.
Okay, but the flag's still around here somewhere, right? Somebody has it?
Talk to Mrs. Bunsen.
You have.
In my vault, very secure.
I will have someone come and fill out an app. Is there one online, or do they have to get it from you?
I don't think it's online.
Okay.
But I definitely have it in the file there.
And I know Karen would like to do something on June 3rd as a raising. Patrick.
Yes, sorry.
Would it be possible to do like at 8:30 in the morning on June 3rd, raising of the rainbow flag?
Sure.
That would be easy enough to set up?
Yeah.
Okay.
What time?
8:30 a.m.
Do you need a specific time, or can we do it earlier?
We need to pick a specific time. So
Patrick's
that
here,
people can come.
Patrick's here at 6:30, if that makes you.
I don't think other people want to get up that early.
Yeah, 8:30, that's fine.
Okay, so I will get an application into Debbie, and then I will get a note to you confirming that.
Okay.
And Patrick and I are still working on the Peter Wheeler sign. We're trying to get some quotes on that, figure out what can be done. We've got a place in Ludlow Park that we've agreed on. And so we're looking at that. It's in process.
Okay.
And that's what I got for tonight.
Talked with Lynn Day the other day about scope of work and work we want to do on the handicap doors for the town hall. So between he and I will probably I think we're meeting early next week, and we're going to try to set that up and get to one, we have a scope of work so we can send it out to bid, and two, hopefully have some specs and whatnot for submittals and of that nature. Other than that,
Which design are you going with?
don't know yet. I think the whole front's a mess with it, personally.
Okay.
We'll see. I know it's up to the board as well for the cost as well. So I think we can get pretty close projections on at least initial cost of what's going to take to rework the glass, what's going to take to put proper door frames in and whatnot. But I think we're probably going to go to sliding. And we can also look at other doors, possibly those be swinging. I know we talked about them. It's not going to be cheap.
It's not going to be cheap, but I don't want to do it cheap and then do it over again.
No, there's always time. There's never time to do it once. There's always time to do it twice.
I want to do it right the first time, if we can.
That would be nice.
I think if we do anything else but leave that, if we don't leave the glass on the door, I don't think that's going to make any good effect. I think we got to leave that there.
Yeah, I want to let you
Well, let's see what the options are. Let's see what, I always said is good, better, and best. And see what we're comfortable with, because we're paying taxpayers money. If it's our money, then somebody can donate all they want. But,
But we're also serving the taxpayers whether they can walk in or not.
well, a swinging door serves the same purpose. So let's see what the options are and go from there and see what the price difference is. I'm open-minded to discussion, but I also like to see what the options are. Okay? How's the planning board going? You're the Monday, right? You want to come on that or not? You good? Good. Okay.
I was gone. I had a whole list of stuff. But then I did. So why would I be redundant and I could be home in bed?
I like this way.
I like the way you think.
You're up.
I like the way you think.
You got nothing.
I thought about it. I might actually make Patrick do this report because my phone died, but I think we got $4,300 for South Point grant, is that what it was?
Yes.
Granted to the Friends of South Point for habitat restoration down at South Point, and lots of groups wrote letters, Parks and Rec and the DEC and Hugo Birds, and they liked our proposal. It's for 6 plots, fenced plots, because there's a lot of deer down there. And we're going to be planting a number of species, shrubs and trees that are not currently down there, or if they're not in any number.
Is it native?
Native, correct. So we'll be diversifying native species.
Nice.
And hopefully, once they get established in the fence plots, they'll start spreading out into the rest of it. And there'll be more deer. And my hunting will go better. Also, the lead testing results, we got some results, but I'm waiting on a few more specifics. In the middle of writing up the report, and I hope to have it done to be released within a couple of weeks before the next board meeting, so people have time to look on it, come up with questions.
How do you want to release it?
We're on the website.
On our website,
Everything
and
else.
give Dan a copy, and we'll just put it out to email release too. That's fine.
You can send it out to probably Matt Montague also.
Yeah, we'll send it everywhere, post it on the website. Yes. Dan and I are in consultation on this.
You're gone next week, right?
That is correct. So by the time the report is ready, I'll be raring to go.
Where?
Raring to be back.
Okay.
Okay. Nope.
Guy, you have anything?
No, mostly it's the water districts and sewer district stuff, and that's winding up, but for number 5 and waiting on word on number 3.
So number 5, talked to Dave Eric about that. He's going to have some scenarios, and I'll reach out to the residents to at the next Wasabi meeting. We'll hopefully have them there, and we'll come to some conclusion where they want to go with this.
Is there some control in fairness with Buckland? I don't.
That's number 3. That's number 3. We're still waiting on the final approval.
That's not the threshold, I heard.
Yeah. Okay. Mrs. Monson?
I do have a brief report on the dog enumeration that is still ongoing.
Seeing them drive around?
Let's see, so we started this March 1st, and up until today, we have licensed 288 new dogs. We've collected the local fee of $4,448 and the enumeration fee of $3,935, which is over $8,000 we've collected so far on that.
Can you help me with the enumeration fee? Is that something that people are charged?
They're charged $15 for each dog that it was not licensed.
Oh, that's on top of the licensing fee?
Yes, yeah, it's part of our dog law.
Okay.
And for just a little comparison, in 2018, so a year ago, from March 1st to May 15th, we licensed 34 dogs for $556. So
Well, we're finding them.
they are
There's
finding-
probably still 200 more to be licensed.
What do they do? Go down the street and blow that high-pitched whistle that makes all the dogs bark in the house?
They all come running out of the house.
So what is the town's cost with this stuff?
You know, honestly, I'll have to look back to the contract.
I'm pretty sure it's $5,000.
That
5,000
number
was what was
sticks with me also.
sticking in my mind too, but I can't remember.
It's a flat fee?
Sure. It's a fee per dog and mileage. We pay him also. And of course, there's actually a lot of extra cost for our office, which wasn't figured into anything, but, you know, mailing and time.
Well,
and all that.
Isn't there some reserve money in that dog donation
About
line
14,000.
Yeah,
that might be reimbursable maybe to your office if it's,
yeah, I'd have to talk to Charmaine about that, because we're using a lot of extra ink and
Yeah.
paper and postage and.
It's worth looking into.
yeah. I mean, just like with Cricket, well, when he works on the water line, why couldn't some of that money from that reserve pay for those services that you provide?
I think that reserve number is pretty high right now. You know,
Yeah, I think
your
it's like-
expenses are about a third of what that reserve is.
Yeah, we'll have to check into it. I did check into, ask Charmaine something about it, if we could use some of it for the additional labor costs, and I don't think it can be used for that. I think she did check into that.
No, we can use it to pay the enumerator, and then move some of the budget money that's in the dog enumeration budget line into another one.
If possible, I don't know how that.
I mean, the reserve money, we have to spend exactly what the reserve, the dog enumeration, I think it's under the reserve fund. And then we have money in that budget line that we can actually just move as we want to as the town board, so I think we can do it that way.
Okay.
What you need to do is look at what the reserve states
Yeah.
usage, and go from there maybe. Okay. Anything else?
That's it. That's.
Okay, this is all.
Just been licensing dogs.
I'm going to try to get you out of here at 9:15. I'm not going to talk about my stuff because I can wait a minute later. A lot of that was on the newsletter, but I'll take this to talk about our town clerk. Debbie Munson was awarded the New York State Clerks. You can have this, by the way. Debbie Munson was awarded the New York State Clerks Association Registered Municipal Clerk Certification at their conference last week. This prestigious award recognizes the professional competency of Mrs. Munson in fulfilling the responsibilities of her office. Certification is granted only after an applicant has demonstrated that they have met the stringent education and experience requirements established by the New York State Town Clerks Association. This program serves to promote the continued education of the municipal clerks to enable clerks to better serve their boards and community. The program helps clerks to understand change, learn new skills required in the new informational age, and perform as competent professionals. Well done, Mrs. Munson. I must say that in the dealing with the public, I have not heard one complaint about your office.
That's what we aim for.
And many compliments.
Many compliments.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
So on that note, I'd like to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Oh, yeah. Oh, just.
You don't take it. So Andrea made the motion.
We don't need one. We're just.
Goodbye.
I thought we needed.
Oh, I got a minute early.